for Damian Martinez. Cuts it back. Touchdown number 3.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
Wigman again to the air. One-hand grab, Evan Stewart. Freshman to freshman and a 15-yard strike.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
One return by Caleb Downs, and he finds a seam. He makes the punter look silly. Caleb Downs, show him what you got.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Judkins up the middle, no one home for Auburn. House call, touchdown.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
This time it's going to be Leonard on the ground. Leonard showing some moves and some speed. A foot race to the 10, to the touchdown. 56 yards. Beautiful run by Riley Leonard.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Gabriel. Launches touchdown, Nick Anderson.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on this Tuesday afternoon. We'll have a kind of nice little dose of G5 news today. The possibility that they might end up with their own top 25. G.J. Kinne, the head coach at Texas State, will join us today. And also John Bryce, who writes for Football Scoop, on the story that he had about the possibility of their own and separate top 25. We'll have that and more. And then we're going to dip a little bit into baseball, the Big 12 standings of where people are and who can make the postseason. Let's start with this, though. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoak. Thank you for your time today. So the NFL draft's been gone for about a week or two, but this is interesting to me. It's always like, so what states? I don't think there's anybody on here that would be surprising. Because even if you say, okay, what about New Jersey? New Jersey's fed the NFL over the years. Florida, Texas, these are the number of players drafted into the NFL draft from those specific states. Georgia, who's like on this heater, not just because of their program, but because of the talent. California, Louisiana, New Jersey, down to Alabama, Maryland, North Carolina, and Ohio. Now, one state that I was surprised did not show up was Pennsylvania, because they've always been a pretty good feeder too. So those are the overall. Now, per capita, what do you guys think? What state or what part of the country per capita feeds the NFL? This is kind of offset from actually who did.
If it was per capita, then like if Hawaii had one, then maybe that would be the math would be slanted.
They're fifth?
Yeah.
It's Louisiana.
Yeah.
No, they're second.
Okay, wow.
The District of Columbia.
Oh, God.
Did not see that coming.
Asterisk. It's not even a state.
One of them was Caleb. I'm just telling you,
Should
per
be,
capita.
though.
One
Should
out of
be, but it's
172,000 people drafted. All the others on that list, besides D.C., are one out of every 400 or so more thousand that were drafted. So that was just a little bit of a trivia note off the top of the show about the draft.
Yeah, and look, I'll just toot the horn for Florida again.
That gap was a little bit shorter this
It's
year.
getting a little shorter. Yeah. The biggest deal, and I'll say about Florida, is that, when they were keeping all those players at home, they were winning national titles between the three schools. Now that those guys have started to leave and go, like, it's not like Georgia's also gotten way better than they were. They've put a hole in recruiting's gotten more national, but make no mistake, Alabama and Georgia's national titles, much like Oklahoma's success, like where they went down south and plucked the best guys out of Texas and were dominating the Big 12, the same thing of Alabama and Georgia were doing that. They were LSU too, and Louisiana's a great state, but those schools in particular could go down into Florida like nobody else could. Clemson's one of them too, and just go down and be like, yeah, I know that back in the day you would have gone to one of the Big Three, but they're pretty boring now, so coming up here.
Well, the Big Three have slipped a little bit, even though Florida State had their run. Florida has slipped. Miami has slipped. Florida with 30 to lead the way. I think because Georgia and Alabama football there has always been a big deal, but they're starting to feed the system a lot more when it comes to elite players entering college football from the high school level.
I think if you look at how Georgia and Alabama and Louisiana have maybe invested in high school football a little bit more over the years than they have before, I think the state of Florida could do a lot better. And again, having spent the last, 34 years of my life, in either of those two states, and being able to kind of compare them, the talent is very similar in Florida and Texas. The coaching is far better, and the commitment to high school sports is a lot better in Texas. And that's all the way across the board. That's not just football. That's everything.
Yeah, the facilities.
And football helps benefit all that stuff. But, look, if you have a really good football program, there's no reason why you're not going to have a really good baseball facility because all the facilities are good. And you can only redo your football stadium so many times with the money that kind of comes in to back up sports. That's the kind of difference. Florida just maybe has some pockets of cities that just have some dudes. Like Miami, I would guarantee you of that Florida, most of them are from the Miami area.
Yeah, who do you guys also think is the number one most drafted high school out of Florida?
I'm going to say the one in
Miami Northwestern?
Miami-Dade?
No, it's IMG Academy.
IMG Academy.
They had 3 draft picks. Guess how many
Texas.
of those? They had 3 draft picks. Guess how many of those guys are from Florida?
0 of them?
0 of them are from Florida.
Yeah.
So
also this shouldn't count.
So those are little intricacies to this poll that just popped into my head because I thought about, there's IMG that counts towards Florida, but I mean, no, it's Florida's, a great state, hotbed of talent. Texas, Louisiana, we say the same schools every year, so that's not surprising to see that list turn out that way. Some years Texas is on top. I don't know the last time California was. I'm sure it was recently. But, Nevada, I think there's a lot of talent in Las Vegas. They also have Bishop Gorman out there.
Yep.
So I think that's a place that's becoming – I just feel like I see more and more guys are from Las Vegas in college football when I'm looking through some of the names. Like Aroma Dunze, for example, is a guy listed out of Las Vegas, and that's just obviously a place where a lot of people are flocking. So that one's – I think going to be around growing more and more as time goes on. But, Georgia's really taken a step up. They were always in the mix, but I think that they've certainly, raised their stock, so to speak, just pound for pound with a lot of the other usual suspects. So, you look at it, you want to get into, like, the heart of college football demographics. Where are all the talented guys? They're in the Southeast. I mean, look, Florida, Louisiana, Georgia, Texas, they're all right there. They're in the same spot. Florida, Southeast, Texas, Southeast,
Alabama.
Georgia, Southeast, Louisiana, Southeast, Alabama, Southeast, North Carolina. I mean, not Southeast, but you see what I'm getting at here. That's where all the players are. That's where, per capita the most talent is coming from. So I think, when you talk about the SEC and their dominance, you have to take that into account as well. Is they're dealing with the biggest brands, but they're also dealing with, if you cut out the country and said, where's all of the majority of the talent, it's in that Southeast pocket where all their schools reside. So I don't think that's a coincidence by any means.
Now, Bishop Gorman, where Adunze went to school.
Adunze.
And 3 different players. You mentioned IMG. Also, the number 1 in Texas was Ryan with Jatavian Sanders and also Brandon Coleman, who went to Washington, drafted by Washington, Denton Ryan High School up in the Dallas and Fort Worth area. Frisco Lone Star had a couple of players, Jalen Ford and Trey Taylor, drafted into the NFL. So those are a couple of schools, and we know Lone Star. Where was Mims from? Was he from Lone Star? That's what I thought. Yeah, Marvin Mims, hell of a player at Oklahoma. So there we are with that. Now, we've heard about the possibility of whenever, at some point, the separation of what happens with college football's FBS, the G5, have to wonder at times. I think they're in a pretty good spot right now. They're in the college football playoff, even if it's just the one school. But the possibility, John Bryce, who joins us in 10 or 15 minutes, they might end up with their own top 25. Good idea or not?
I think it's a good idea because they've got to start marketing themselves separate of everyone else. 12-team playoff and them being involved in that is great. I'm very happy that one of them will get in. And there are probably years where maybe two of them might deserve it. You never know. But there are – because, look, if – I think, a couple of years ago, that team that Willie Fritz had at Tulane could have beaten several teams that would have been in a college football playoff just because they were so good and so tough. And playoff games are it's not about who's better all season. It's about who's better that day. Who's to say that Tulane wouldn't have been better those days?
The question is not the one-game playoff game, but could they have done that for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, which is going to be interesting to see once we expand it to 12 this year.
Absolutely. But everything that's happened this offseason and the last couple of years, all they get are scraps. Well, we're going to include you. So, yes, you get a team in. For sure, you're going to get a team in. And that almost feels like it's done to placate everybody going, well, what are these people playing for? And so you have to do something. Look, Ari Wasserman did a post-spring top 25 on The Athletic today, and none of the schools were in the group of 5. And look, that's due in large part because of the Big 12 has plucked probably the schools that were most likely from the group of 5 to be regularly ranked in there. Tulane is a new coach. He's not going to put Liberty in there. So Boise State, kind of in flux right
UTSA?
now. UTSA, all those things. So there's only a few you could put in there, but as the mega conferences get bigger, and when you've got 18, 16 of these leagues, well, shoot. I mean, what are you going to – and then Notre Dame in there. What are you going to do? How are these teams going to have any spot in a ranking to say that they are what they are?
Craig, one of the things that was mentioned, and we'll have John here in a minute, if the number 2 team in the group of 5 plays the number 6 group of 5 team, that should or could attract more viewers and attention.
I mean, yeah, it could. It should. But I don't know that the rankings really – change that up. I think it's going to be confusing. Are you going to clarify is the G1 number 5 versus the AP number 23, or how does that work? I think that's a little confusing, but I think a few things about this. I think it's a nice idea on the surface, at least, of being a good way to bring some attention that otherwise you're not getting, as we've already laid out here, that there's a lot of people that just don't pay attention, don't care, don't include, don't want those schools a part of the main rankings, or just don't give them the time of day, as we've seen with a lot of polls throughout the years. People just don't pay attention, and I'll put this recognizable team at 24 rather than the undefeated G5 team because this team's in the ACC or the SEC or whatever. There's a lot of that disrespect that goes on. So I think to fight for the right to have some proper attention, I think this is certainly a way to go about doing that and potentially bring more eyeballs to that product. I don't think it's a game changer. I don't think it's anything that brings you significantly more eyeballs, but I think, we all get dazzled by these rankings. Why do we have preseason rankings? It's so that they can sit there and go, well, number 1's playing number 5 on opening weekend, and we don't know that they're the number 1 and number 5 teams before the season's even started, really. We can guess, but that is something that attracts people. So if you're flipping through channels and you see 5 versus 10, maybe you are more apt to stop than you would be if it was just saying, Tulane versus SMU and they didn't have any numbers beside their names. I don't know. That's what you're banking on, at least. And having those teams feel like they're actually fighting for something that they're a part of and not just, lucky to get a table scrap, I think is something worthwhile as well. You got to feel like you matter, and I do feel like a lot of the moves that are being made are telling them otherwise. So to go out and strike out on your own and try to create something that just drums up further discussion and further interest, I think is a smart play on their part. Right now, more so than ever before, because it does feel like they're sort of fading into the background as the money gets more lopsided and the TV deals, become more questionable moving forward. I will say, though, at the same time, I just feel like you're playing right into the hand of the bigger schools. This is what I said about the what was it, the last thing that we talked about? It was their own playoff.
Yeah.
It's like, I bet Greg Snakey, I'm going to start calling him Greg Snakey. I thought about that the other day.
That's pretty good.
Greg Snakey. No, Greg Sankey is probably like, thank you guys. You're doing it for us. Just get out of the way. Go start your own thing. Get it all geared up, and you can just slide right into that because, yeah, you're probably not going to be a part of our future playoff vision, except for when you're lucky and you have a team that is able to slide on in there on occasion, like a Houston when they were under Tom Herman, or any other number of examples here in more recent years. Tulane recently, not so much Liberty. Like that was just such a bad look last year for them against Oregon in the bowl game. That really just deflated a lot. But I do feel like you're kind of leaning into the whole idea that you are separate and that you're not a part of the same thing, and that this is a step towards doing that, whether intentionally realizing that or not. And I asked this about the playoff idea, and it was like, well, you got to do something, and I agree with that, but I also do think that while saying that, you could also be playing into the hands of those who are wanting you to go off and start your own thing and do your own thing. So that might be a little bit of a slippery slope. And then again, I don't know what you do about it anyways. So maybe this is what you have to do, is just do what you can, try new things, and you know what? Either way, you're probably going to end up in the same spot, so why not try to create something before that death knell comes, so to speak.
John Bryce will discuss it with us next, and also we'll have a coach of a G5 and G.J. Kinne at 3:45.
This does have a little bit of a "you can't fire me, I quit" kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
If in the most negative sense of the story, but again, you may have to do that anyway, Craig,
right,
like you said, because if they're just taking steps to eliminate you anyway and box you out to where you're never really going to be a part of this, and they're going to throw you a bone to have one team be in this thing and everybody else not even close to considered,
pat you on the head and make you think that you're lucky to have that spot to begin with.
Then you might as well just say, look, if you guys are eventually going to break off and do something different, and look, that's not only the case for this, but Charlie Baker's proposal was to tier it off anyway. And those schools, I mean, there might be some that are willing to say, all right, well, you know what? Louisiana Monroe, we're going all in. Duck Dynasty guys, how much money you got? We're gonna rock with this. But most of those schools would be like, well, this is where we're gonna have to be because we don't have Texas oil money that's coming in for us. So they're just going to have to stay in the tier they are. So might as well. I mean, this is a pretty, I would say, minor thing to prepare for it.
Right.
But, it's not stupid to stock the storm shelter if a storm's coming.
Yeah, no, I think that's the best way of putting it. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you sit on your hands and think, oh, they'll keep us included, we'll be a part of it. We may only get like one piece of chicken compared to everybody else is getting a full plate, but at least we'll still be included. I mean, you can be happy to just have a seat, I guess, but I think that they're wanting more than that. They're wanting actual opportunity, and your opportunity is very limited. So, yeah, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you play into the hand of those above you, they really don't have a lot of consideration for you to begin with. So even if you do still stay included, to what extent is that really beneficial, big picture for everybody that's in that situation at that level of football? So, yeah, I think you're doing a good advertising move. I am curious of how it's marketed. I know the coaches are going to vote on it, so I like that there's that, although they won't show like who voted for who, and they won't have that level of transparency, which I don't think is like a big deal, at least early on. But yeah, it's an interesting idea, and I don't see anything negative or wrong with it. Like there's nothing that goes wrong with it, but I do just wonder if you are, again, intentionally or unintentionally playing into the hand. But you got to do something. You can't just sit on your hands and expect a magical lifeboat to come and save you guys.
Don't live in fear. Don't live under your sheets or under a rock because of what might happen. All right, here are this is from Phil Venzer, our buddy in Vegas, put this up from College Football Network. The all-name team. Now, the first name on this list is in the portal. He's not with Oklahoma. General Booty, the quarterback. Jajensky Schlenbaker is also among the all-name team.
Jajensky Schlenbaker. I like, let's see.
Rowdy
Beers is the best one.
I still think DeColdis Crawford, even though he left Nebraska, is still just a great name because his NIL made so much sense. Rowdy Beers, yep.
Parker Titsworth certainly is not cashing in he's probably not allowed to cash in on the NIL that would be really acceptable.
He should go to school in Florida.
Yeah, what business is associated with Parker?
I mean,
Hooters.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. My God, yes.
Yeah.
Just say it.
They'd like a little more double entendre in it than just
Fat Watch for Tulane, Jaden Muskrat. So there's 3 or 4 that seem to be pretty intriguing, but that was the all-name team. Thought we'd pop that up there.
King Large. It's like a combo meal at McDonald's.
King Large and Parker Titsworth could date.
Sure.
Sure.
Could.
But yeah, no, Parker Titsworth, I'm sure, has gone and been like, hey, look, I've got Scores really wants to give me an NIL deal. And like, well, that's one of the 3 things you can't take money from.
Yep.
Right,
There you go.
That's the problem with that name. But yeah, that would be an interesting couple. So long as they got the order correct there in the newspaper, their wedding announcement would be a great. When Conan O'Brien used to do that bit of the funny couple headlines, that would have been right up that alley.
All right, a couple of men's basketball notes in the break. Seton Hall, Kadari Richardson, the number 1 ranked player, at least by ESPN in the transfer portal, former Seton Hall guard, has committed to Rick Pitino to play at St. John's. He had visited Oklahoma, Syracuse, Miami, USC, but the Brooklyn native will just walk across the street from Seton Hall to play for St. John's and Rick Pitino. Also, former Kansas great Danny Manning has joined the staff of former Tad Boyle, former KU player who played under Larry Brown back in the mid-'80s. Danny Manning has now been added to Tad Boyle's staff at the University of Colorado.
I'm still waiting for the day where he gets to finally be the KU AD. He was, by the way, he was at the game that I went to this year, and they put the camera on him and then Rob Riggle, and Rob Riggle got a really big round of applause. Danny Manning, honestly,
he won a national championship for them.
I'm surprised. No, he got such a good round of applause. I'm surprised that nobody ran him down a drink after that. Danny Manning's here, and there's just like a line of people like, here's a soda.
Carried KU on their back, and I think it was '88. Oklahoma had a great team with Tubbs, I think it was, and Manning and KU got hot to win a national title. He was one of the all-time greats, no question, in men's college basketball history. We'll take a break here. Come back with John Bryce on the story about the G5 and the top 25 poll a little bit later on. What does G.J. Kinne think at Texas State about a G5 separation, at least, or the options of that? That and more. This is 365 Sports. Dr. Steve Childress is my dentist. Stonewood Dental, Robinson, Texas, has helped me get way ahead of what used to be way behind when it comes to a game plan and taking care of my dental work. It's one thing to do with the fundamentals, but also when something or you have a habit that's not good, like for me, with sweets and sugars, eventually it's going to catch up with you. And then when you start to have pain, the last thing you want to do is go to the dentist because you know what they're going to do. Probably stick a needle in a couple of different places in your jaw or your mouth and it hurts, and then maybe a root canal or pull the tooth or whatever it might be, and it just gets worse, and it just multiplies. That's what happened to me. Dr. Steve Childress 5 years ago said, listen, you've got some issues we got to take care of. We're going to have to pull that tooth, maybe that one. We got to do a root canal here, and the bridge you have at the front, man, I don't know what we're going to do with that. We'll worry about that later, but we'll make sure we have, at least be proactive with it. And you know what? I was like, golly. But I had to do it, because if I hadn't done it with his advice and with his great team at Stonewood Dental, I would have 10 times more problems to deal with. Dr. Steve Childress, Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas.
Cars priced right both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Let the journey to financial brilliance begin with Genco's limited time offers. Max your earnings with a Kasasa cash account and get paid monthly with a 4.25 APY. That's $425 annually. Then invest in a 13-month share certificate and earn 4.9 APY. That's $529. Earn cash and outshine the rest. At Genco, we offer you the sun and the moon. Kasasa based on average daily balance of $10,000. Certificate based on $10,000 investment. See GencoFCU.org for details. NCUA.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is a premier elite life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Offering over 50 group exercise classes every week, including boot camp, bar, silver sneakers, and 10 cycling classes with morning and evening classes available. New state-of-the-art bikes that allow you to compete against yourself with a screen monitoring your speed, miles, resistance, and power. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, Alex Botch, and Nathan Roach, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow, losing inches in weight the right way. There's a kids club included with your membership, plus sauna and tanning bed. 16 tennis courts, plus a beautiful stadium court, and longtime youth tennis pro Britt Coleman and assistant junior pro Kinne. Adult tennis lessons and clinics with Blake, and the commitment to pickleball with 8 courts and instructor Jody Thurman. Visit the website at wacotennis.com next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
John Bryce, footballscoop.com. We've had Zach Barnett on many, many times. John as well, and he joins us now on 365 Sports with Greg and Paul and David Smoak. John, thanks for your time. A couple of nice nuggets for you guys with stories, including that meeting up in Frisco. But let's start with the G5 and trying to, like even you said, carve out their own space. What are the pros or the cons, in your opinion, if they're already negatives in having their own top 25?
The perception is what fans, I think, are worried about, and maybe even some university presidents as we continue to talk about this and talk with our contacts around the country. They're in 85 scholarship programs in these group of fives, and they want to be seen as able to compete on the largest playing fields and to have a role at the big table. But the fact of the matter is, especially with the Big Ten and SEC having that alliance and the way that those two are trying to break off and take care of their own interests, that it's making it harder and harder for the group of five programs to get a legitimate seat at the table. And you got 64 programs approximately in the group of five, and you got one playoff spot at most that group is going to give. That leaves a lot of really good teams potentially on the sidelines or looking at bowl games that are going to frankly be further de-emphasized as we transition into a 12-team playoff in college football.
John, is this, I used the metaphor earlier of, is this filling the storm cellar before the storm hits?
That's a good way of putting it. I think, again, I talked to people involved with the proposal for a group of five playoff today. I talked to an athletics director about all of this last week, some other coaches. It is. It's, when you look at NFL rosters, and that's a point that an SEC coach made to me today. He was like, look, there's a lot of good football in the group of five. And he point blank said, I'd watch it. If you're telling me there's a group of five number 2 team versus the number 9 team on a Wednesday or Thursday night and we're not playing, he said, yeah, I would watch that for sure. So I do think it's just, again, trying to ensure that these programs still maintain viability and visibility. And there's 64 teams. I keep going back to that, and there's a lot of really good teams in that, and there are a lot of really good players on NFL rosters that hail from those programs.
Yeah, John, I don't see any downside to this. I don't see any harm that can come from it other than just like stepping into the future that people seem to think is there for you. It's like, well, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You might as well try and, create some excitement if that's going to be the case. But you mentioned talking to some folks about just in general the playoff idea. What kind of responses did you get in terms of the playoff idea that was out there a couple of weeks ago for the G5 teams?
Yeah, a really strong response, to be honest with you. I think the next step in that is getting probably university presidents aligned with it, again, that are cognizant of what kind of message are we sending, what are the true pros of this, does it fiscally make sense? And again, I think Derek Dooley has done a good job of getting preliminary financial backing for that proposal. I know from speaking with a number of people that Derek Dooley has met with Group of 5 ADs around the country to try and help make this happen and continue on a journey to actualize this Group of 5 playoff. Again, I've got friends at ACC coaches, contacts at ACC schools, coaches there that are worried if they're going to have a seat at the new super table if it's only 40 or 50 teams and you've got 34 teams combined from the SEC and the Big Ten. And so, again, I think a lot of times college football, maybe college athletics in general, drag their feet on some things, and that's probably why NIL is the mess that it is today. But these are some people who are trying to be proactive and, again, carve out a space for a lot of really good football teams to maintain relevance and give people even more reason to want to tune into one of those games.
Any idea how Oregon State and Washington State would be viewed? I would assume that they would be a part of this, but they're in a weird limbo, obviously, for the next couple of years. I would assume, or do you know, has it been mentioned at all, whether or not those two teams would be included in something like this, or how about independence?
Yeah, what I was told is that they wouldn't necessarily be considered for the top 25 poll if it gets off the ground as they're trying to do by the 1st of August. And again, I do think it's worth noting that some people working on this are far enough down the road that they've already secured a title sponsor. And I'm not sure when they're ready to announce who that title sponsor is, but we at Football Scoop have seen some of the documents. We know that they have secured a title sponsor. As far as, but I don't think Oregon State and Washington State would be considered for the Group of 5 top 25, because it's my understanding those two programs are still trying to find viability elsewhere, whether that's a way to join the Big 12 or to have some sort of conference or scheduling arrangement more long-term with the Big 12 as opposed to what they're doing right now with the Mountain West. That remains a great question, but it was emphasized to me that Oregon State and Washington State aren't ready to accept their potential fate as becoming Group of 5 or left-out programs.
John, if in fact you could poll all the 60-plus teams, how many of them, or how many of the football coaches do you think would want the separate poll?
That's a really good question. I think we know coaches. We know coaches that sometimes have recruiting rankings tied to their bonus structure. So I can see coaches warming to this idea because it would be another metric to measure the progress of their programs and to potentially have bonus structures to say, hey, if we finish the season ranked in the top 5 in the Group of 5 top 25, I get a $50,000 bonus. Or if we advance to the Group of 5 playoff, it's a $25,000 bonus. Or if we win 2 games, it's a $50,000 bonus. I think coaches would come around to it. Coaches I've talked to are certainly in the past couple of weeks more so about the potential playoffs and than the top 25 rankings. They've been open to it, again, because they know, and being at those DFO meetings last week, it's such a clear case of the haves and have-nots, and I'm not sure it's ever been more divided. And as it was put to me within the last couple of days, it's getting so much harder for those G5 teams to hang on to their rosters year after year, that if this can be something, the playoff can be something that helps them financially, maybe it helps some of these G5 programs stabilize a little bit.
John, how much, I mean, like I said, they're preparing for the storm and all those things. Is there a sense you get that they're about to say, well, just forget about it, and like, if you want to take one of our teams to the playoff, fine, but we really, really, really have to move on?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's a lot of frustration. And again, there's good football, and none of these coaches is saying they can't compete with these teams on a weekly basis or whatever. We've seen Marshall knock off Notre Dame a couple of years ago. We saw Marshall knock off Virginia Tech last year. It's not been that long since Billy Napier took Louisiana to Iowa State and absolutely spanked the Cyclones. And so no coaches are shirking from competition. I don't want anyone to think that that's the case, or that that's the, and I don't think that should be the narrative, but their coaches trying to make sure their programs have a seat at some table. And with 64 teams in those group of 5 conferences, or 62 in conferences and 2 of them independent, 64 is almost enough for its own division. And it's, again, far more like-mindedness and like resources among those programs than what you're seeing from a Troy or an Alabama, Marshall, or a Louisiana or Louisiana Tech or any of those.
John Bryce again with us, footballscoop.com. You also, both you and Zach, and every day there's something about whether it's NIL, the transfer portal, or whatever. You were a part of a meeting up in Frisco with football ops and also senior administrators, and I saw that one note that said, we wanted to do it like we weren't going to recruit people that wanted money or ask for money immediately, and that lasted for, I think they may have said 6 weeks or 6 months. What was the overall thought, or what was the overall mood walking out of that meeting that you were a part of?
I'm going to be honest with you, it was empathy for those DFOs who, I don't know a DFO in college football who probably isn't already overworked, and now after being with so many of those men and women for 3 days last week in Texas, it's getting worse, and it's going to continue to get worse for them until there's more of a set of guardrails in place around NIL and around the transfer portal. I had multiple DFOs tell me, and we wrote this in the story, that they're now responsible for helping fundraising to supply salary money basically for their NIL salary caps or their salary pools. And I had one gentleman tell me that basically he's assigning his DFO, his assistant DFO, to be a full-time fundraiser. And his goal every day is to reach out to X number of alums and benefactors and donors to the program and ask them how they feel about contributing on a regular basis to NIL. And also, I think NIL is moving closer and closer to being an in-house entity at more schools. I think that's going to be another one of the next steps. But that's the meeting, is that you had DFOs who already had to cancel their meetings that they normally have at the AFCA convention in January because of the transfer portal and the recruiting calendar, and they had to stay back and help organize visits and bring people out of the portal onto campus for official visits at that time. So they pushed to May to have more time to go over some really important and diverse topics. And you still had DFOs all 3 days having to walk out of the meeting rooms in order to try and help coordinate visits with kids in the portal who wanted to come on official visits, or kids that were reaching out saying, I'm really interested in your program, but also here's my asking price. So I just feel a lot of empathy for those folks because, again, they do so much work behind the scenes, and now it's being piled even more on them, and it's a nebulous system right now without guardrails.
It's college football, so we know there's some sliminess to it from time to time. It's part of why we love it. It's also just part of what's ingrained in it. But I've heard some some tales when it comes to recruiting, but having a guy like basically have to be there to monitor the post-game handshake lines to prevent tampering, it's just like, that is so college football, but that's, I guess, what it's come to at this point, that you can't even have a handshake line after a game without needing to monitor your players because of somebody trying to slide in there like it's their DMs or something.
Yeah, and we had that in the story, as you guys note, but just a little bit more detail on that. There was a DFO who indicated the program he worked for witnessed this happen over the past season, 2 different instances. There was also another program that indicated their head basketball coach had witnessed it happen as well.
Wow. Well, okay, so we know there's this gulf that's grown, and it's not going to ever be surmountable. I mean, it is kind of is what it is. But with all this talk about putting caps and NIL and all this stuff, where do these groups of schools kind of fall in line with what they are capable of doing, and what is kind of the threshold that can't be crossed, so to speak? I mean, is there enough commonality between all these, and yet are there still those that are have their own built-in advantages, or is everybody kind of in the same spot? How would you describe that, I guess?
Well, I think at the upper level, the true super teams, so to speak, or the super funded athletics budgets, there's a clear separation there. Now, I talked with a DFO who indicated that the program was spending a lot of money, but they're still struggling every month to make sure that they're able to basically meet payroll. As it pertains to the G5 coaches, I've talked to some guys who have said, hey, we're kind of leaning into it. And we've told people, maybe you're disappointed right now that you ended up at our program when Power School A or Power School B was recruiting you, and then they took somebody in the portal instead of you. And they said, we're leaning into that, saying, come play for us for 2 years. If you're good enough going into your junior year and power teams come back around and start recruiting you, we'll try to help you go to those power programs. So again, I think there's an acknowledgement of the reality of things. You've got people that one DFO last week said we're trying to pay our guys $500 a month or $1,000 a month, and then you've got multiple SEC programs that have NIL salary pools of literally $1 million a month for their entire rosters.
John, really good stuff, man. I'm glad we got you on the show. Thanks for your time. Great stuff with what you and Zach produced in Frisco, but also with this latest that you popped on the G5. We'll have GJ Kinne here in just a second to get his feedback on that too. John Bryce of FootballScoop.com, and this is 365 Sports. TexasBeefHouse.com marketing director had an incredible online auction, live auction, of course, in the month of April. There'll be another one just around the corner. But May, people start to get out on the grills. The weather's cleared up. You got a special throughout and some ideas for the month of May.
So May, we consider May, June, and July as grilling month. We've got our jalapeno and cheese patties, our regular Wagyu hamburger patties, our garlic links. 2 things that people aren't usually familiar with are our flap steak and flank steak. Those are a large piece of meat that you can cut up and eat with a fajita, or a lot of people will just cut it up and eat like a normal steak. This is our favorite time of the year because it's the perfect weather to get outside and get that grill going.
In the end, did you guys have another great auction? Did it all go well?
We had another fun auction. We had Wagyu brisket at this auction. It was phenomenal. We had so many customers that were so excited. They've given us their feedback on Facebook. We've got a lot of exciting things coming with a new platform that we've got going called Bid on Beef that we'll be releasing in the next couple of months. We're really excited about what the future holds for us.
TexasBeefHouse.com. No hormones, no antibiotics, no steroids, premium grade East Texas beef from their pasture to your plate. They'll deliver it to you locally. They bring it directly to your door. Farm-raised Wagyu beef. May grilling month, May, June, and July, and there's not a better place to find what you want to put on the grill, whether it's hamburgers, flank, or flap steak. Samantha, there's always that code to get a discount.
Yes, absolutely. Use the code SICK'EM10, SICK'EM10, and get 10% off your order of $100 or more.
TexasBeefHouse.com.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon and infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em Bears.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports. Are you a Sick'em 365 superfan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at sick'em365.com.
Thanks to those of you in the chat room, those who watch and or if you listen to us, however it might be, 365 Sports on YouTube, and then also what we have with sick'em365.com, the app that is always there, and at times we don't mention that enough, and I had somebody mention that's how they do get to listen to us and watch us on occasion, so that's also something we need to bring up more than we possibly do. So we'll have G.J. Kinne, Texas State football coach, with us here momentarily on 365 Sports. So, if there was a separate G5 national title, when would you play that game? Because we have the FCS, we know what they do, the Division III, Division II, there's that weekend, it seems like they all get decided over a week or two. What would you do? How would you piece that together? And if I'm a G5, I know what the outcome is eventually, but I'm not giving into that yet.
No, I mean, I'm gonna try to see, here in the next couple of years if one of my guys can, go into the breach and come out with more than one win, and maybe then, it'll get some momentum. But even still, that's just going to be more reason for them to kind of like, no. Like, it's fine if we lose to Ohio State, but we're not going to lose to the Ohio Bobcats. So, that's just how it goes. But they're going to push that even further out. But I would maybe not do a 12-team playoff, but I would do an 8-team playoff, and I would play it. I would try to have it done before the other one. You'd have to kind of intersect it through the days, but that's what I would do.
G.J. Kinne, the head football coach at Texas State, joins us on 365 Sports. G.J. with Paul, Craig, and I'm David Smoak. Thanks for your time. We've had you on before. Great to have you on again. So I know you're a fighter. You guys opened up the year last year winning at Baylor. What do you do when you hear about the G5 and the possibility of being separated into the future? How does that process in your brain?
What's up, Smoak? I'm good. I have no clue. I'm just so glad the portal window is closed, and I get to relax just a little bit. I haven't even thought about that. I'm not totally against it, though. I mean, it sounds pretty cool, but I still think there's a chance. You still want that Boise State, feel. You still want, TCU back, and you still want that game to be had, and so hopefully it doesn't go all the way one way or the other. But whatever they tell us to do, I'll do, and go out there and play the best of our ability.
GJ, does it change the way you strategize in recruiting or anything like that, or is it just still the same because you can't deal with hypotheticals or things outside, or guys saying, well, the G5 is different? How do you do that?
No, I think for the most part right now, guys are the NIL's probably changed that for the most part. It kind of takes care of itself, to be honest with you. So. No, it doesn't really affect our recruiting. We still go try to find the best guys and hopefully try to steal some gems and get some guys in here that can really play that are P4, P5 players that are playing for us here at Texas State.
GJ, I know you don't really have much to say about the playoff idea, but there also was this floated about having a separate top 25. Now, I'd imagine if Texas State was the number 14 team in the AP, they'd be the number 14 team still in the AP. but also the number one, I guess, in the G5 rankings. What do you think about that idea, just to put more of a spotlight on teams like Texas State and others like your program, just to bring a little bit more flavor and maybe recognition for what you guys do, and instead of getting lost behind the usual suspects?
To be honest with you, I'm probably not as big a fan of that as I am maybe the playoffs still. Just because, I mean, still, I think there's something to be said for, those G5 teams being in the top 25. And if you're not the best 25, I mean, who cares? I don't know. That's just kind of the way I think about it. But I think I like the playoffs just because, I dealt with the FCS playoffs and how cool that experience was. Like that was some of the coolest moments I had. We played, Furman at home, then we go out to Sac State and go to North Dakota. That it was almost like the Texas high school feel. I mean, what I'm saying, you still get that, and who's going to be the buys and who's going to get the at-large bid. So that I enjoyed that part of it. But the top 25, I think it's maybe you have that after the season or something, what I'm saying? But as the season goes, I think just top 25 is the top 25, and then maybe you do the playoffs after that or something.
Well, if other schools that don't want to discuss much about the G5, not that many people say that publicly, but you hear some college football leaders at times, how much of that is the chip on the shoulder wherever you've been, Incarnate Word, where you are now at Texas State? And if that's the case, why do those Power 5 or 4 schools, why don't you tell them to stop trying to steal your players?
Well, yeah, that's a whole nother thing. But, I don't know, to be honest with you. I think we do I'll talk about us. I think we do a really good job of evaluating. We do a really good job of finding guys that fit our scheme. And I think our guys, offensively and defensively, the schemes that we run are very productive. So we're always trying to hold off those big guys. And luckily for us, as soon as the bowl game ended, I mean, I was having talks at 7 a.m. the next morning about all this and raising money. And basically that's all I've done, until this portal window closed. And I thought the season that we had last year really gave us some momentum in that aspect, and raising some NIL money and being able to hold on to these guys. We really only lost, one or two guys maybe because of money. And it was really good to be able to hold on to a bunch of our really good players. I think we got a chance to be really, really special next year.
I know that you entered spring with a lot of flux at your quarterback position. How did that balance itself out now that you're through all that?
Yeah, I think, we were able to add Jordan McLeod, who's the player of the year in the conference a year ago, and getting him for the spring I thought was really good. And there's some other guys, you got PJ Hatter, you got Brad Jackson, and I'm not allowed to talk about some of the guys that hopefully we're going to be able to add to the room. But I think it's going to be a really, really good competition. I think at the quarterback position, really every position, I think just like a year ago when we had TJ and Malik, I think you need to have a real quarterback competition. I think to really bring the best out of everyone, and obviously at some point you got to roll with one and go with them. But I think it's good to have a real competition in every room, but especially the quarterback. I mean, you're the leader of the team, and it's your job to go out there every day and to bring your A game. And so I think when you have someone you're battling with and pushing you, I think you just tend to play a little bit better.
Were you, in a way, caught off guard by some of the blowback on Delora? Was that something that you had to discuss with administration? Eventually, obviously, he's no longer there, but second chances in football, players that have had issues at times. What was that like for you during that 2 or 3 week stretch?
Yeah, I don't want to get too much into it, but because you're my guy, I'll talk about it a little bit. Obviously, unfortunate situation, and I wish him nothing but the best. I think he's a really good player, and he's moved on. I think he just signed with the San Antonio Brahmas, and hopefully he has a really good career. But we did a ton of research, and one of those situations where wish the kid nothing but the best, but we've kind of moved on, and we have some really good quarterbacks in the room.
GJ, how much of your background of what you did in college at Tulsa and obviously initially with Texas and then the NFL, how much of that do quarterbacks want to be a part of what you do?
Yeah, I think the quarterback position, obviously, in all of football, is a premier position. So I think when you have somebody that played it and coached it at the highest level, and then now that what we do, on Saturdays and the production that Lindsey Scott had at UIW and last year with TJ Finley. And I think it's an exciting offense. And obviously I'm not taking all the credit. Our offensive coordinator, Mac Leftwich, does a tremendous job, and he's a star in this profession. And had to hold off some P5 programs this year for him. So he's a guy that's either going to be a head coach or, P5 OC, very soon. So, he does a great job, and I think both of us together with our knowledge and experience playing the position, I think the psychological piece of it is something that people don't take an account for. Like, I know what it's like to throw a pick six and have someone scream at me, and I know what it's like to have a pick six and have someone say, hey, you go talk to your O-line, go talk to your receivers and get those guys going. We got to go, score some more points here. So I think that confidence that we breed into the quarterbacks and the system that we run, everything revolves around the quarterbacks. And so I think we've shown that to be very productive in the way we do things.
You have a roster that is, again, when you inherited a roster full of transfers, you went and got more, but now you've got guys who are transfers who are multi-years in the program. So that kind of, aids you in that development. You're very, very veteran-laden this year, Coach. How much confidence does that give you going into a season knowing that you are mostly seniors and juniors and you're too deep?
Yeah, it's very, very similar to what we had at UIW. We went and added a bunch of really good pieces there, and man, I feel really good about where we're at. Offensive line, defensive line, the skill positions on both sides. You have a lot of guys that have played a lot of football and are very productive, have the experiences, playing a Baylor on the road, playing in a bowl game, playing in the conference championship, so some of these guys have that experience. So I like where we're at. Now, obviously, we got to go out there and do it. We have have to have a really good summer and a good fall camp, and everyone's talking about it. Last year was, they had all these guys. Are they going to be any good? Now it's like, okay, these guys are going to be good, but how good? And I think for us, it's just going to be about us and our attention to detail and our coaches holding these guys to a high standard every day, which we have. But I really do. I think we got a chance to be pretty special. But I think if you the one position group, if you want to talk about position group, that D line, I was out there raising money like crazy to keep these guys. Man, every team in the state, I shouldn't say that, but there are a lot of teams, wanting to get these guys, and it was tough to hold on, but we were able to. But I think a lot of times too, like, those guys enjoy the environment. They know the defense they're going to be in, the coaches that they surround, the other players, that they know we have a chance to do something special that maybe has never been done before here at Texas State. So I think we got a lot of momentum going on right now, and the buy-in level is at all-time high. So we got a chance to be special, but obviously you got to go out there and do it.
Well, speaking of some of those players and those guys coming back, your running back, Ishmael Mahdi, I do stuff weekly with the Earl Campbell Award and look up stats across the state of players from here, and he was a constant, GJ. Like, every single week it seemed like I was having or I was seeing Ishmael Mahdi's name pop up with a big performance or a big play. I know he's not the biggest guy in the world, but, man, he's tough. Just how would you describe his game, and what's it been like coaching him, and how big of a role does he have on this football team for you?
Yeah, I think going into the season last year, to be honest with you, he was a little banged up in the spring, and going into that Baylor game, he was kind of the second guy coming off, the bench, and didn't really know exactly. We knew he scored a lot of touchdowns when he was in there, but it was just, we didn't really know what we had till the games rolled around. Obviously, the Baylor game, he had a big game, and after that, he kind of took off, and he's a home run threat. I mean, he's got tremendous speed. He's got great vision. He has added bulk to his frame this year that I think is going to really help him this next season. And just a really, really smart kid, and really thorough in his approach. And we were talking about, because obviously, I mean, he got, people hitting him up and all that. And like, he really went through in the pros and the cons, and we sat down and talked about it. And he's just a really, really smart. And I think he's an NFL player all day. I mean, I think he's a chance to be like a high draft. I think he's really special. And so he's just got to continue to be the leader that he is. And he's kind of that guy that you want like your daughter to marry. Like he's a All-American on the field and off the field. He just really is. He's just a great person.
GJ, most any head coach I've ever talked to, even a player, they go into a week playing somebody and they feel like they can win the game. There's a way to win the game. And you guys opened up with that win. You mentioned that win against Baylor, which was a huge win. And obviously Baylor just really never recovered from that. Entering that week, what was the mindset in San Marcos before that game?
I think that's one of our strengths as a program, and myself as a head coach is instilling that confidence. And I think you see the guys that we brought in, and our scheme is so unique, and the tempo, and I thought our O-line did a really good job. I think early in that game when we were able to run the ball, I think after that we're like, okay, we got some confidence going. And then same way with the defense. When we were able to stop the run versus them last year, I was like, okay, I think we got a real chance here. So I think we saw that going into it, and our coaches believed in the plan, and we were able to go out there and execute. I thought, for whatever reason, last year, maybe the best game we executed all year was the Baylor game on both sides. I think just the confidence and we spent a ton of time on Baylor, that summer, and a ton of time during fall camp, just really on Baylor. And I thought we had a really good plan. And I think anytime, you're able to maybe as the underdog to go out there and jump out on a team and kind of shock them early. I thought that we were able to do that, and they just weren't really able to recover. And I don't think they were built offensively to really come back. I think they were, you're able to jump on them. I don't think they were able to come back. They weren't built like that last year. And so that was kind of the plan to jump on them and try to score as many points as possible early and kind of hold on.
Well, after that game was over, I think all of us, it was like, you have upsets, and that would be considered one. Is the best team won the football game? You guys were the better team.
Yeah, I think so. Now, obviously, I got a ton of respect for those guys and what they're all about, and the coaching staff that they have and the players they have. But I think that we have a unique situation over here at Texas State right now. I think we got really good players. I think we evaled really well for our scheme, and I think that kind of showed throughout the year. Now, we did have some talk about not the Baylor game. We had some ups and downs last year as well. We were still a first-year run program, first-year ups and downs and inconsistency. So that's something that we're obviously talked about and working on this offseason.
A couple more questions. G.J. Kinne, Texas State football coach. Craig?
You jumped into the San Marcos River after you guys became bowl eligible. You'd go on to win that bowl game. I was just curious. I know you want to probably move on from the celebration, but that's always going to be memories that you savor. Just what was that like, GJ? I mean, to take this program that was just sort of plodding along, it was there, and to get to that point so quickly, there's obviously so much more out there for you. But have you had a chance to just kind of, settle in and did you get a chance, I should say, to settle in and just kind of enjoy that? And what was that like when you kind of just sat back and thought about the journey that y'all had taken over the course of last season?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think just taking the job, everyone was like, you talk to donors, you go around in these different speaking events, and it's, basically, hey, talk to me when you go to a bowl game or when you win a bowl game. It's kind of the feel I got. I've heard this before. I really did. And so for us to kind of accomplish that in year one, man, it really was special. And we had a great group of seniors and a great coaching staff, great president, great athletic department. So it was a lot of fun. I think jumping in the river was awesome and made headlines and all that. But there wasn't, just to be honest with you, after the bowl game, there wasn't a ton of time to be able to like reflect because it's recruiting. It really, I think still, I was talking to someone the other day, just just the Baylor game in general, it seems like forever ago, but the impact that game had on our season and this program and the momentum, like it was huge. And so I still, it's kind of one of those deals where like, yeah, we first game as a head coach at Texas State, we go down to Waco and beat those guys. That was pretty special and something that, probably be one of the highlights of my career.
GJ Kinne, Texas State, with us on 365 Sports. How much? We'll have Gus Malzahn, I think, later this week on this show. We've had him on before. Yeah. You learned, obviously, a great deal from him at Tulsa, but also he's got that coaching tree, and you're going to have yours. What was it the most that he brought to your attention as a player that you can still use now as a head coach?
I think just the way he demanded from his players, from his coaches, and obviously I got to work with him. I was his offensive coordinator at UCF in 2021. Just the way he demanded things to be run and held everyone to a really high standard. Didn't matter if you're the equipment guy, the athletic trainer, the offensive coordinator, the GA. Everyone was held to a really high standard. And I think the way he recruits, you see the type of players that he brings in. You see it right now through the portal. And he's always going to have a top, 1 to 2 recruiting class every year, and just his attention to detail. And he loves ball. He loves recruiting. He never makes excuses and just goes out there and wins. The guy's a winner, and he's proved that at every level. And just very fortunate to be under him as a player and a coach.
Staying in line with that, you've obviously learned from some great folks along the way, including Gus Malzahn. You and your OC Mac Leftwich, nation's top offense, made lots of headlines, as you've pointed out. How would you describe, GJ, sort of what this offense has become? How do you describe it to folks? What are the biggest, influences? And man, what a ball of razor blades it can be, and yet fast as all get out. Just can you kind of discuss the creation of all that we now see with the Texas State offense?
Yeah, I think we're very unique. I don't think you have the old school Browse offense. I would say you probably start with that, but I think our run game is very similar to Coach Malzahn's, because that was what I was in, Coach Chad Morris. But then our wide splits and the tempo, you go back to the Browse and what he was able to do. But I think my experience, and then Mac Leftwich's experience, my experience with Chip and kind of the way the mindset with Chip Kelly and the way, his philosophy is on offense, and really Chip's run game is a little bit different than us. We're not necessarily a wide zone team. We're more of a vertical inside zone counter team. But the wide splits and going fast and playing the numbers. But I think one thing that's different than maybe a Tennessee or a South Florida or the old school Browse offense is the pass game, just because of our air raid background with Coach Leftwich and his history with the people he's been under, and then my history with Chip Kelly and then being in the NFL and some of the West Coast offensive stuff and philosophy. So we're kind of a hodgepodge and a combination of different things, but to our core, we're the uniqueness is our wide splits and we're a run play action team. We really are. Everyone talks about the passing numbers, but we've led the our conference every year in rushing that I've been a head coach. So we're a run play action team. We're going to run the ball and really force the defense what they're going to do. Are they going to play too high shell and we're going to run the ball all over you, or you're going to put somebody in the box and then you're going to start seeing us throwing it over your head? So we just kind of let the defense dictate what they're going to do. That's probably the hardest part about our jobs as an offense, is we usually don't get what we prepare for, because it's just kind of the flavor of the week. How is this defense going to try to attack us? And then after about the first series or two, we're like, this is their answers to the wide splits, and we've seen this a long time now going on year 3 with me and Matt kind of talking to each other and saying, this is how they're trying to stop this is how they're trying to stop this. These are answers, and we're able to really go out there and execute at a really high level, because just the experiences we have with each other and the way Coach Mack game plans and teaches those quarterbacks. And it's a fun offense, a unique offense. And I think it's really on the cutting edge of college football.
With all the coaches you brought up that you've learned from that have also run something similar, is it still amazing to you? You could watch film and come up with a unique twist to something that after all of the great coaches who have coached this game, and now you're part of this new school wave, that there's always something new you could add to a play call or something?
Yeah, it is. And I think that's probably our problem. You know, you talk about adding a Chad Morris to the offense this past year. We had Craig Stutzman last year. We're always looking to find unique and new ways to do things and try to get as many smart people in the room together and just go to work. And I think it's probably the biggest obstacle we find is not doing too much, you know, but I think that goes back to, we talk about Chip Kelly's philosophy and really getting good at something and having your base plays and then just really putting lipstick on the pig after that and going out there and going out there and trying to execute at a high level.
GJ, thank you very much. Proud of you, what you're doing. It was very impressive watching that game at McClain Stadium last September. No question about it, that what you did the rest of the way. Good luck moving forward. Thanks for your time as always. And we appreciate you very much.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you.
G.J. Kinne, Texas State football coach. Saw him when he was at Canton High School, and then at Gilmer, and then, of course, was at Texas, and then had a hell of a career in college at the University of Tulsa. Played with the Giants and the Eagles and much more. Listen to all the names: Malzahn, Dykes, Morris,
Bryce, Chip Kelly,
Chip Kelly, all of them. I mean, just
amazing offensive mind of the last 20 years. He's basically been under or been influenced by and helped create the offense that we see now. It's the nation's top offense, and we saw that up close and personal. I do think that, you know, not only did we come to find out that, at least in that opening game, that Baylor was not the team that really anybody thought that they would be, but imagine having to prepare for that on their end. Like he just said, they spent all summer, all offseason getting ready for that game, and you're Dave Aranda on the other side. You got a first-time defensive coordinator in Matt Powledge, and here comes this offense. Of all the things you had to see right out of the gates, it was that, you know, ball of razor blades, that as I called it. But, yeah, I mean, just super impressive. What a great, coaching mind. And he and Mac Leftwich make an incredible pairing that just gives defensive coordinators nightmares. And, you hear all those influences. And, I mean, this is like the Frankenstein of all those different things, the Kelly, Bryles, Malzahn, all of that, and their own ideas as well. So, yeah, it's going to be super cool to see how that continues to blossom. I know he couldn't talk about R.J. Martinez, who was here at Baylor, who's now transferred to Texas State. So he'll be a part of that quarterback room as well. I do think that's a great fit for him in terms of what he can do with the football and the offense itself. I think that'll be a good spot for RJ. I think things are going swimmingly. It's just, it's a matter of how long can Texas State keep it up and keep it up with him, because he's a hot name. He's going to be a hot commodity. And I didn't want to ask him, in May, about the future and all that, and we're just talking football, but certainly he's a guy you look at, like the 20 or the 30 under 30 and those kind of lists. I mean, he's at the top of that when you talk about college football coaching, and he has to be, and rightfully so. So yeah, he's a guy who has already done some great things, but has a lot more out there that's going to be, incredibly fun to watch. How that continues to evolve throughout his career, not just the offense, but him as a head coach. So, a lot of fun already, but so much more promise out there for he and Texas State as it stands right now.
San Marcos is about 50 miles away from San Antonio, about probably an hour, 15-minute drive, but two coaches right down the spine of 35 with Jeff Traylor and G.J. Kinne that everybody knows where they are and what they've done.
By the way, Garrett suggested today that I go down to San Marcos to prepare for my cake stand when we get to 50,000.
That's a good place to start.
That'd be the place to go to.
Party school.
Still loved it better when it was Southwest Texas State. I still think that was more when it was known as a party school, and that's what, you just called it Southwest. I know that's been 25 years now since they've changed the name, but it was Southwest to me for the longest, and that's what I'll always remember it as.
Yeah, no, that's a place that has fun. What was the game? Was it the bowl game? What was the game when when Texas State played and when they left the stadium, before the game was over, the beer went dry.
Yeah, it was the bowl game.
Against Rice, right?
Yeah.
G.J. Kinne, appreciate him, and also appreciate handling a tough question, but the one that I think still needed to be asked because of the blowback at the time. They went right through it, moved on. R.J. Martinez, he couldn't speak to him, Craig, as you mentioned, but I think that's just another weapon in his quarterback room.
Well, they'll play UTSA again in week 2. So he against his old coach and Jeff Traylor, and Traylor got the best of that last year. But then they play Arizona State in week number 3. I'm going to tell you right now, Sun Devils.
Yeah, be ready.
Forget the
Kenny
Big 12,
Dillingham,
buddy.
yep.
Yeah.
Well, you better be ready for that game. So Kenny Dillingham and company are going to have their hands full in week number 3 for sure. That's a fun schedule. Them and Troy ought to be hellacious.
Sam Houston State might be interesting because they're now moved up to the FBS level. They're really pretty good, but yeah.
And I was thinking Detroit just lost Summerall, but I mean, there's some good games on this schedule is what I'm getting at. And early on, that Texas State versus UTSA game ought to be a slobber knocker, and that Arizona State game, that's one to definitely pay attention to as well.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate Texas State giving us the access to G.J. Kinne. I mentioned that Coach Malzahn might be available to us, could be on Thursday of this week. We'll let you know when that time comes. This is 365 Sports. Pioneer Steel and Pipe. 1943, they opened their doors, and here we are in 2024, and they're rolling along. The brand-new facility is now over a year and a half old on Loop 340 and east of I-35, also known as Highway 6. They have, from the beginning, learned that you can shake a hand of the customer, look them in the eye, have a deal, and they do that even to this day, but you also have to have great product. You can know somebody that owns a restaurant, but if the food's no good, that doesn't mean you're going to keep going back just because you're friends. So Pioneer Steel and Pipe, not only customer service that a handshake makes and does mean something, but also the great product to build things. Pipe, steel, and metal. Now with their brand new building with distribution that's even better than ever before, and it was always good, the product that they have, the bays and distribution efficiency, which is incredible, whether you have an 18-wheeler, a hauler, or even a big, large pickup truck. Pioneer Steel and Pipe, pipe, steel, and metal. They are experts when it comes to metal buildings and also can help you with contractors so that your job doesn't get extended forever and ever. Pioneer Steel and Pipe, pioneerboys.com.
It's the season to rev up your drive with Alan Samuels with the new Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram in Waco. Your ultimate destination for unbeatable deals and top-notch service. Looking for a reliable ride to conquer these beautiful spring days? Look no further. The powerful trucks and sleek sedans are the perfect SUV. We've got the perfect vehicle to match your style and budget. Over 300 new vehicles to choose from. Now's the time to make your move. Enjoy special discounts, low financing rates, and incredible incentives. But hurry, these offers won't last forever. Alan Samuels in Waco.
Come by. Let's be friends.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
When your business depends on technology to stay on track, you need professional IT services you can trust. Carry On Solutions offers managed IT services, network professional consulting services, and cybersecurity. Carry On Solutions expert team handles M365 and Azure migrations, Active Directory assessments, security assessments and hardening, Exchange migrations, Windows Server upgrades, Veeam backup and recovery solutions, and more. In a world where technology is constantly evolving and security is an ever-ending concern, Carry On Solutions will keep your business running by minimizing risk, downtime, and giving you peace of mind. For more information, email sales@carryonsolutions.com or contact carryonsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now, here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go. This 4 o'clock hour. Craig's off the radar around the corner. Man, there's a team in the NBA that's red hot. We'll get to that and more, I'm sure. No?
I'm guessing you're going to say the Minnesota Timberwolves, and yeah, they are.
Oh, Lord.
Jesus. I'll get to
Absolutely.
them, so to speak, but
they're fun to watch. I don't watch a lot of NBA basketball. Yeah. Like I don't get to, they're making me want to watch. Not making me. I want to watch because they're so young and youth. I just love their energy.
I like when in the NBA in particular, when you see the changing of the guard of eras, and this year I think is very much that. Maybe it started with Giannis and Joker a couple years ago, but really, what? Luka.
Yeah,
sorry,
you.
But I was about to mention him. Yeah. But now you've got like Luka and Brunson and Edwards and like these new guys who are kind of the next wave of who are going to run the league. What's going on in Oklahoma City? Those kind of things are really cool to watch. And I don't think it's any coincidence that the Knicks got better when they added 3 Villanova players to their roster in Brunson, Hart, and DiVincenzo. Like you had guys who played fundamentally good basketball. So right now, Tom Thibodeau is able to overcome the fact that he has the worst owner in sports. And I hope for James Dolan's sake that his cover band gets more gigs because of this.
Yeah, well, I mean, they are having a lot of fun in New York right now. And I'll mention the schedule as I typically do with just all the postseason stuff. But I will say that the Timberwolves, I know there's a lot of people don't care about the NBA or watch the NBA. I have my moments in and out with it. I'll say right now though, like as far as the young talent goes, and like what Paul mentioned about the changing of the guard, like now is a great time to hop on board and like pay attention. Anthony Edwards is freaking unbelievable, and it's sacrilege you compare people to Jordan. For me as a Jordan kid, because that was my wheelhouse. And we've heard like what a dozen guys mentioned alongside him. Some of them unfairly because it's like LeBron's LeBron. Like he's not exactly like Anthony Edwards is as close to Jordan. Like as far as like even he does it intentionally somewhat like he did last night, like the mannerisms, but it's not always intentional. And just his size and he's got a lot of that to him, man. Like he really does. It's crazy.
Bringing back the mid-range jumper. I mean, he's
special. He's super special, and I don't mind it when I hear the Jordan comparisons, just because they're very similar in a lot of different ways. But yeah, I'll get into that a little bit with the next segment.
We'll do that in Off the Radar around the corner, and so there we are with that. I thought GJ gave us 2 opinions on topics we had early on in the show. 1, the top 25. 2, the playoff. And then also he had, like every coach, he's so buried in trying to raise money and try to get enough NIL to keep the players that he has that it takes an effort to get them there.
I know people get tired of hearing about that, but it's also like we're an outlet for them in some ways, and so that's what they're going to talk about is like, yeah, it sucks, and I think every coach now is conditioned to say, like, we get it, like, we have these contracts that allow us this freedom or buyouts or whatever, and I don't think many, if any, now at this point are opposed and trying to argue that it should be the way that it was or anything, but, you do feel for some guys, especially, it's not like he's at Michigan. He's at Texas State. Like, it's like we heard with Jeff Traylor. Like, that's a much bigger challenge than having to deal with what guys at Texas or, various other programs along those lines are having to deal with when it comes to the NIL portion of it. Because, like how much does Oklahoma – I think they have to fight for certain members of their roster, but, like, if you're at Texas State, like, you really have to fight to just keep your roster intact, and because you're not playing with the same kind of tools. And so – I can imagine it's incredibly frustrating, but on the the other side of that, that's just you as a coach have those benefits and have had for a very long time, and now the chickens have come home to roost, and unfortunately, I think the coaches are kind of in the crosshairs a little bit. Like what they benefited from for so many years is now coming back to haunt them in a major way, even if it's not really their fault that players weren't getting paid or that the system was the way that it was. So it's a tough and yet still very lucrative position to be in, but certainly the smaller the school, the tougher the job, and the more challenging, the more time you're spending on a lot of stuff you'd otherwise not want to be spending any time on. But so I'm trying to remember, he was not in favor of the poll, but he did like the idea of the playoff.
The playoff intrigued him, I think. Yeah, I think it intrigued him. The poll, to me, that just didn't register.
I gather from him, like, the poll doesn't really do anything unless they're going to do the playoff, right? So, like, it seems like one without the other. Like, if they're going to do the playoff, then that actually gives them, something to look forward to. Now, I wonder if they continued, like, if they're going to have the playoff, do you still continue to, like, okay, we're going to lop off the top team, they're going to go to the regular
That's what I was
playoff,
wondering. Like, are you the
like,
15th team in the AP and then the number one team in the G5? Like, that's kind of what I was wondering too.
Yeah. So,
but I assume you would be.
Yeah. I'm not sure how that works.
I mean, there's only going to be 2 or 3 teams any given week that are going to be in that predicament to begin with, if even 2 or 3.
Well, look, it also, I mean, if you tiered off like a regular playoff, an NIT, and a G5 playoff, it might actually create a path for the bowl games to stay relevant. Yeah. At least somewhat, because I do think
Snoop Dogg Bowl first round in San Marcos.
Yeah, but I do think that you are going to I know the bowls and the playoff are in a collision course that the playoff is going to win, because once the playoff gets well established, like 3 or 4 years into this, people are going to go, why am I watching the Gator Bowl right now? Like, what? I mean, other than being a fan of something, there's no stakes to it anymore at all. Because winning.
I disagree slightly, because I think for those teams that get into that, that's still going to matter for them.
It's for the teams, yes, but I'm talking about for the fans. It's going to be.
But I mean, but but how much do we really care about the Gator Bowl?
But it's gonna even devalue that even more,
sure,
right?
It's going to be a pretty big deal. That's how things have changed.
Yeah. So but you have am I watching the Gator Bowl because I really love football? That I'm at the house. There's nothing else to do. It's the holiday week. All those things, but what the excitement is going to be for the people outside of it, because what bowl games used to be was.
You sound like you're an old man.
Back in his day.
But this is how they were, is that, if Georgia and Florida State played, it was cool, even if they weren't playing for the national title, because they didn't play all the time. But now, given the way that bowl games have turned out with opt-outs and all these other things, they suck. For the most part, they suck.
I used to sit, again, old man, get off my lawn. I'm not complaining about where they're going, because it's all about money. The opt-out's all about trying to make sure you don't hurt yourself and help your career, or whatever career you have. I would sit down and not leave. I would watch 15 games in a week. And it's just not there's so many going on at sometimes now at once, although ESPN has most of them. But but I don't know about the top 25, whether that works or not, but that was an idea. GJ liked that idea. Liked the playoff idea, but not the top 25. The one good news is, at least no matter how much of a sliver it is, it's no different than even possibly what the Big 12 has to face if they're not careful or they don't start winning big games, is that you at least have a seat at the table. And that's what we fought for. That's what, as when all hell broke loose with Texas and Oklahoma, if you were K-State or Tech or Oklahoma State, whoever, Baylor, you wanted to be able to make sure you still had a seat at the table. And we went through all that. And now at least somebody, whether it's Boise State or UTSA or Texas State or whoever, Tulane, they have a seat at the table, and at least that means they have a chance. And that's all you want when you start workouts in August.
Yeah, and if you don't, then just be told that and then go all in on whatever that's going to look like, which would be a separate playoff. So, yeah, maybe it's joined together initially, and Texas State's the top team, and they make it into the 12 team, and then – like, that's the part I don't understand is how would it work if Texas State got into the regular playoff and they were the best G5 team, then they're not in the G5 playoff?
No, they can't be. I don't.
Right, so that's what I don't. That's what the part that's not making any sense to me, because that seems like it would devalue, because that's not really the true G5 champion, is it? Because
Mike Porter, the G5 top 25 to me is a symbol of separation.
No, it absolutely is. Yeah, I think if you read the article over at Football Scoop with John Bryce, like there's a lot of acknowledgement of that, or at least in our interview with him and the parts I read earlier, there was, definitely some of that, like just facing the truth of. Yeah, we're leaning into basically where they're taking us, but, I mean, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. So you might as well start coming up with ideas that could better your future as opposed to sitting back, waiting, being the Pac-12 and just saying, oh, it'll be all fine in the long run. Just let your ego guide you and think that you don't have to do anything. So I think they're actually being very smart and being proactive and trying to come up with ideas, whether it's a top 25 poll, just to give you some extra sizzle on TV when the score bug's up there and you got numbers next to names that always, attracts eyeballs for at least a second, or it makes people go like, oh, these are two teams that are pretty good. I didn't know Troy and Southern Miss were, this as good as they are. So, I'm going to sit here and watch this game. This looks pretty good.
You could get that could be
or it has ramifications for that playoff. And
could be overlooked because they're not in the top 25 or whatever. Yeah,
but it is an acknowledgement of we are not playing the same game much anymore. And if anything, we probably just need to start planning our exit strategy. So I think that's part of what they're doing. I still do wonder though, how would that work if the top G5 team's not in the G5 playoff? So I would need some clearing up there, but we get there eventually.
That would probably work itself out. Josh Grotus, I don't know if, Josh, I'm saying your name correctly, but hell no to the G5 playoffs. Stop trying to kill FBS college football. And Josh, I think we're on board with you. I do think that there may not be at some point you eventually run out of gas. You do. And I hope that never occurs. We, I think, are all pretty much in agreement. Craig's an OU fan. I'm a Nebraska fan. Paul's an FSU fan. I think we're all in agreement, even though we like what our larger schools. We cover the Big 12 a lot and others. I think we would like to still see it survive as it is today, but so much has changed. Who knows what's going to happen?
I'll say this. I am intrigued by the idea of a G5 playoff because I do think it gives them some attention and importance that otherwise they're not receiving very fairly. Like, you have to be undefeated, bottom line, and really making waves to get even a sniff from the voters and sniff from the main college football folks out there. So in that way, I do think it is very intriguing and would be interesting. At the same time, I know why it's a terrible idea, because you're basically just giving in to this fate of being separate. So I'm totally with you on that. Like, you don't necessarily do it willingly, but I do think you have to at least be coming up with ideas and throwing them out there and getting feedback. And so that's what they're doing. I think they're just being smartly proactive, but not, giving any concessions just yet. And I'm with you. Like, we root for teams that will be in whatever the next thing is. If there is a thing that is a super league of some sort, even if it's 30 teams, I think we all feel very comfortable that our team will be involved in that. But it doesn't necessarily mean
Garrett's LSU Tigers too.
Yeah, yep. He would too. But that doesn't mean that we're rooting for that. I know I'm certainly not, because we cover a lot of teams that won't be a part of that, and we don't want to see Oklahoma State, on the outside looking in for no reason other than they're not Oklahoma, or, didn't win enough in 1945 or whatever the case may be. So not for it, but do think that that's smartly proactive on the part of other officials.
I would hate for teams to be left out of a playoff because a bunch of guys drinking mint juleps in 1938 were like, this is what we're going to do. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, here we are 70 years later, and they're like, yeah, well, tough on you. Should have been more than an ag school in the Depression. Yeah. Or
by the way, where your school is located in some cases, or Justin R., I think created a 16-team NIT playoff with auto bids for all 9 conferences would be okay. Every FBS champion would be in the playoff, either college football playoff or the NIT.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways you could go about doing it. That's certainly one of the ways, and I think that part of it would be a fun exercise, just of the what if and what could that look like. And I'm sure that a lot of people have fun with that idea and what that would be. I mean, clearly got to get the question cleared up on the G5 representative in the main playoff, because you can't do a playoff without the best team that would be at the top of that playoff. But beyond that, yeah, there's some fun and creative ways it could work. I just wonder how many Troy fans or Tulane fans or, all of those schools, would you prefer to go to whatever bowl it is and have a shot to play like Florida and beat them, as opposed to going to a tournament where it's the very clearly a prestigious thing, but it's also the
a great
tier 2 tournament.
I was going to ask
I don't know where most fans would fall on that line, and maybe some would prefer it's just to be the traditional bowls. Bowls aren't going to go anywhere. They're going to have to be incorporated somehow. There's too much tourism money and extra dollars, but I don't know how all that will continue to work, especially if there's then a G5 playoff. But, I think there's going to be a split of opinion, but you got to kick around ideas.
Lorenzo Haynes, a top 25 G5 would make me more aware of the top G5 teams, not in the regular top 25. If you look at the preseason top 25 when it comes out, there'll be like 3 teams in the last 5 slots.
Yep, Tulane,
and then like
UTSA.
3 receiving votes, and then they'll just shift up and down. Every once in a while, somebody will kind of nudge themselves into a pretty nice spot. UCF did it back in 2017 and a couple of other schools. But for the most part, they are still, okay, let's put them at 22. And,
I think Lorenzo's absolutely dead on about that. I mean, it would create some extra information and attention for some people out there. Absolutely. We follow this game pretty closely, but we don't know every nook and cranny of every single team at all times. And so, I'm sure if there's a commercial come across, be like, dang, I didn't realize that, I keep saying the same teams over and over again. But I didn't realize Southern Miss was the 3rd best team according to these rankings of G5. And oh shoot, they're playing the 5th best team, as opposed to just Southern Miss versus fill in the blank, or App State or something. Yeah, I probably would go, oh shoot, that's a 3 versus a 5. That would make me more likely to watch it. As much as that's just a marketing thing, it would fill in some blanks for people who don't follow those schools very closely. I do think that would be beneficial.
Well, I mean, look, and the thing is that good. I think you've seen good football is good football, especially if it's evenly matched.
Oh, yeah.
So when you have teams that are so evenly matched, if Texas State and App State are playing and they're both really good, people like us may turn around and watch it because we're always flipping through games. But if you're somebody who's kind of giant hunting, maybe you wouldn't. But if it's on and, you're kind of in a dead time, and it might be better than, watching Michigan versus whatever team they're about to swallow up in the non-conference. Flip over, watch a game that's pretty exciting. Look, I got really into watching South Dakota State this last year. That Montana versus Montana State game, which is a rivalry anyway, that went into extra overtimes in the snow. That was awesome to watch. Good sports are good to watch no matter who, what it is. And so if you can find a way to let people know that, the Fun Belt's fun, it really is. They have a good conference that, occasionally goes out. And a couple of years ago, they had the year where they just ran through all their non-conference games, particularly because A&M lost 2 of them. But they ran through them, and then, it's fun.
Mike Bean, so it begs the question. We don't have enough time to get to that now, and it could have different angles of how you answer it. If, in fact, there is a super conference, how many or which Big 12 schools will be included? The reaction, mine was, it depends on how large is the Super 2. Is it 40? Well, now you're going to be in trouble. Is it 50? Is it 70? Then, of course, you might already be a part of that.
To me, there's 2 options for the Super Conference. The Big Ten and SEC grab who they want and leave. Or the other conferences find a way to go with them and then separate themselves out from the other. But that would involve a TV deal that shares a little bit more than it does now, which would not happen under the current conference commissioners.
Yeah.
I think that all just kind of depends on, the dominoes that fall. I'm of the belief right now as it stands that there is a place for the Big 12. I think there's a place for the ACC as well. Pre-movement or post-movement. I still think that if the ACC let's say Florida State and whoever leaves, I don't think it's going to be like 4, 6, 8 teams. It's going to be like a couple of teams, maybe 4 teams. And that's also if we get through all this lawsuit. And I know there's like a deadline this summer. Was it July where you have the option, right, Paul? As far as the ACC, right? Isn't there an option deal coming up this summer? That's a kind of a signifying deadline of sorts. But
August 15th, they'd have to tell them
they have to. Yeah, that's
for this year. They want to leave for 2025.
That's coming up later on this summer, so that's going to tell us something one way or the other. But I'm not convinced that the ACC just falls apart. I think they stick together in some form or fashion, and I think there's a place for them in whatever that looks like, and I think there's a place for the Big 12, and I think that maybe there'd be like a team or two from like the Big 12, like maybe, and like I said, 2, maybe 3 or 4 from the ACC. So we're not talking about like swallowing up another 15 teams. It would be very minimal based on just reading the information. And so I think that still leaves you with, why would you want to exclude Oklahoma State and K-State and Utah potentially and West Virginia and all these great, like you still need product on television every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, every week in the fall, and you can still have big-time matchups. So I think there's still always going to be a place. Now, if it turns into like the live golf thing or, some weird loose, we're not really college anymore. We just wear their logos and we play on their campuses.
We're playing the same game.
That could be 35 teams or whatever, or 40 teams from 2 conferences. But I don't think that's what's up next. I don't believe in that. I think there's too many hurdles to that and too many issues with that. As idyllic as it sounds for some, I think we're still a little bit of a ways away from that. Just my personal opinion.
Yeah, who knows? And Paxton did send me this, is that I was going to bring this up at the start of the show. Off the radar is next. Is that and Brandon Marcello with a great story yesterday in 247 Sports about the coaching carousel and the trends. Is if you were not a part of the SEC or the Big Ten, and there are 3 outcomes, right? Nothing changes. There is a separation, and I forgot the third option because I'm not very smart. Would you rather just know now what the end game is, or is it, do you just believe that somehow everything's going to work out? Would you just go ahead, tell us now, shoot the bullet in the head of whoever you are and move on? Or is it just keep scratching and clawing?
Well, I think it's like anything in life. You keep scratching and clawing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's put it this way. If it doesn't happen for 10 years, why am I going to sit here and ruin the next 10 years because I'm moping about the thing that's going to change in a decade? I'm going to enjoy everything the way that it is until it isn't anymore. I think you got to be mindful of the future, but, that's not something anybody can just say right now. I don't even think the people in charge can say with certainty that they know exactly what is next and what that will look like and what that might take. I think everybody's trying to figure all that out at the moment, but sure, I would rather know just out of pure curiosity of hey, is the future of college football a 40-team fake NFL with all the biggest brands, country clubbing it up together, and then the select few that make it still seem like college football? Thanks, Vandy. Or is it 60 or is it 75? I think, sure, we'd all love to know that right now, but part of the fun is that we don't know that. The part of the entertainment is that we're all scrambling to figure out what that is.
Yeah, I just wonder about the wear and tear about being able to enjoy now, which is what you can do. It's like living, right? Enjoy what you have now and just keep your eye both sides behind you and in front of you on what might be happening in the future.
Well, in life, you can't just assume that everything's always going to be great all the time, but you enjoy the pockets of where it's really good while also being mindful that shoe could drop at any moment and something could take this thing sideways because that's life. So, I think that's kind of how you approach it is you got to prepare for the future and you got to prepare for every instance of whether it's idyllic or it's catastrophic, especially for schools not named Ohio State, for example, or schools like Ohio State. I think you've got to be mindful of all that, just like you got to be mindful of retirement and you got to be mindful of your savings, like your kids, and you got to be mindful. You prepare for everything, but you can't just know everything ahead of time and have it all be perfect.
Yeah, how hard would it be to live life when you're always worried about the meteor hitting you in the head? You know it might be up there, but why not enjoy what you have when you have it?
I think you're getting to your old man territory again. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
I think that, like,
hey, when you turn my age,
I understand.
Yeah.
You start thinking about that, Meteor. But I'm not going to. I'm ready to live my life now like never before.
Yeah. I think that's good.
Knows?
I think that you need to, like, they can't worry about that. Like, I do think that there will be times in the future where, Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, kind of make these moves.
Snaky, Paul.
Snaky. Sorry.
Yes.
I called him Kim Jong Sankey. So, but where Kim Jong Sankey, Kim Jong Snaky, we'll just combine the nicknames. But when they make those moves, that the other commissioners need to come out and go, like, okay, what is your end game? Like, just maybe tell us and call their bluff a little bit more.
Maybe they don't really have one either, but they kind of like the
power.
power.
No, I think Greg Sankey doesn't walk into a room without a plan.
I think they kind of enjoy this little power trip.
I do too. I think that they have a pretty good idea, probably the rough outline, or maybe even a more descriptive outline, more detailed outline. But I don't think that they have every little solution already wrapped up and every T crossed and I dotted. But I think they kind of know, like, if it goes this way, like, this is what it looks like, and if it goes this way, this is what it looks like. But I don't think they have every answer solved just yet.
Finish it out. We have to get. I don't want to get to Brandon Marcello, two ladies at 5:10, so we have off the radar.
I'll just say this: Greg Sankey is a man who helped concoct a plan about bringing up his conference in their profile, and certainly was helped by some great programs, but also manages to sidestep the question, but what about the ones who don't win? And it's just like, oh, yeah, but they're still good. You're like, oh, okay, well.
Here's the thing. You can be in those leagues right now, and you're not necessarily fully safe if you're not named certain schools.
No,
so,
if there gets to a point where there's like the Augusta National of college football, there are a handful of schools that have to be worried no matter what secure they think they are in a conference.
Right, so I think it's kind of just, then again, the same as it's always been. There's like 15 schools that are bulletproof no matter what, maybe 20 in a given year, and then everybody else has to be prepared for just about anything.
Yeah. No, you're right. When we come back, off the radar, Craig Smoak. Also around the corner, Brandon Marcello. Hall of Fame columnist John McClain. And Paul's Top 5. We have an hour plus to go. And all of that next on 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, the people you can count on for over 2 decades in the Waco and Central Texas area. They've been just the best. So when it comes to customer service, and I can attest to that firsthand. Donnie, the great folks over at Richard Carr, always welcoming, very friendly when you walk in there. And for me, I had to go get my car worked on a while back and get some dents from a little accident cleared up, and they made it a very seamless process. It's been a little while now. I need to probably go check back in on the good folks over at Richard Carr, but they are always there on a daily basis to welcome you in, whether it's in person, over the phone, or online, to their great customer service and the great deals that they have for you. And that includes right now a lot of cars on the lot. And if you need space for your entire crew as the summer gets kickstarted and a lot of families go out on road trips, well, you need a Buick Enclave. The Buick Enclave offers a quiet drive. It also has a lot of space, and it also has space-age technology, all the latest bells and whistles. Buick delivers uncommon luxury at a common price, and you can come experience a Buick test drive today. And when you do, you can also save thousands on the Buick Enclave, $6,000 as a matter of fact. You can also save thousands on the new Buick Envision model in that same family of vehicles. And if you're a military or first responder, on top of the thousands in savings, you can also save an additional $500 on top of that as well. The Buick Enclave, go check it out right now. The ideal vehicle for family road trips coming up this summer. If you're not looking to buy new, they've got a lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks as well. Dozens of highly inspected and used cars, trucks, and SUVs on the lot right now, and 100% credit approval is always the goal over at Richard Carr. They say yes when others say no. So check out the Buick Enclave, the Buick Envision. Check out that lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks, or check out many of their other offerings. You can talk to them about that when you go see them in person, or give them a phone call, or visit the website. But a lot of options there, and guaranteed great customer service and great deals. For 25 years in Central Texas, Richard Carr's built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely, and I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
Welcome into Off the Radar, Tuesdays, Thursdays at around 4:45. And that's where we find ourselves on this Tuesday. A little bit of Off the Radar, and typically I try to get outside of college football because we talk a whole lot of that, but I did want to mention this because I don't know if we were going to talk about it otherwise today. Were you planning on getting into Deion, talking about his comments and clarifying what he had to say? The whole dust-up last week with the Max Olson article and his Twitter comments. And
I think after that, I kind of dropped that.
Okay.
I saw some reaction to it. I know there were more podcasts and columnists and all that. And I saw Deion still scratching
he talked about it.
Okay.
Yeah, he talked about it. So I didn't know if you were going to get to it.
No, go ahead.
Or not. But he was on the pregame show, which I guess is a place that he frequents. And he was asked about whether or not his conduct was appropriate in talking about the former player that spoke with Max Olson last week for that article in The Athletic, and kind of dunking on the kid. I mean, I guess for lack of a better term, and kind of poo-pooing on him or whatever. And he told the pregame show, I got to do better on that and not ride with it, but I was bored. I was bored, and I didn't say nothing hurtful. I don't attack people. So that's what he said about his comments. And, he got asked about, the comment about Shedeur that he reacted to about being a top 5 pick and this and that. And he said that was real, that's what he meant. And then asked about the Lord Jesus comment when it was pointed out that one of the players, Jaheim Ward, was not particularly productive. And he got his stats pointed out. He had somebody that was dunking on it was Caleb Mathis. When Ward was dunking on, Caleb Mathis said, bro, you had 38 yards last year. Stop trying to downplay somebody. It got into this whole this whole back and forth, right, where suddenly this kid was getting disparaged, and that's when you had Deion say, Lord Jesus, in one of his responses, and that just opened it up even further. So he said that he tries his best to refrain, but when you posted stats, I said, Lord Jesus, like, dang, he really went at him, like he really shot him. That's really what I meant, and I think that was taken wrong. I think that was taken sideways or something else. So there was Deion just kind of commenting and I guess readdressing some of the Twitter back and forth from last week. I don't buy it. I don't buy what he's saying. I think he knew exactly what the Lord Jesus comment was. He was further targeting the trash talking of that player's stats. I think he knew exactly what he was saying, but I didn't know if you had seen that. He said, I don't lose no sleep over any of it. I could have a tumultuous day in the eyes of others, but to me it was a good day because you know why. They talking. Well, that's Deion Sanders about all the dust up last week. Not backing down, but kind of shying away from what his intent seemed to be last week.
Distancing himself from
and you know, kind of not really damage control, but sort of kind of just putting a lid on it and sort of moving on. But I don't think it was a good look for anybody. I don't know about you guys. I think it was just a bad look all the way around. And so hopefully we move on from that. But talking. People do talk about them a lot. And it's going to be just fascinating, again, to see them this season because last year was what it was. You had the built-in, hey, there's all these transfers. It's year number one, this and that. But year two, man, there's got to be some expectations.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's got to be real expectations. So, anyways, I just seen that in passing and thought I would bring that back up. Meanwhile,
Deion will always have a spotlight no matter what.
No matter what.
But the less amount you win, the less that spotlight will be across the board nationally. It will be him. And he'll still get the attention. But yeah, he needs to show some success.
Yeah, and if people are talking
success is, I don't know.
If people are talking next year, it's because they're 4-8. It's not because like you're in people's heads or whatever. It's because you're 4-8. Like that's why people are talking because there's been so much talk and you got to back it up eventually. You talk the talk, but walk the walk. I know he feels like he probably does that, and they do that. But the record said otherwise last year, so we'll see what they can do this year. And then, Lord have mercy if they win big. We know what that first month of the season was like, but if that actually carried over. Prolonged through like October, I mean, what a circus that would be. That would be something else. Meanwhile, Chiefs receiver Rashee Rice is under investigation for allegedly hitting a photographer at a club in Dallas early Monday morning. Police officers said that witnesses are being interviewed about an incident that allegedly happened at 609 North Harwood Street, a.k.a. the address of Lit Kitchen there in Dallas. Rice, of course, was involved in the multi-vehicle crash last month in Dallas that the video tells the tale there was just stupid racing in major traffic, and luckily no one was killed. But you would think after that you'd stay low profile maybe, that you'd kind of just not be, getting into any issues. And look, sometimes trouble comes your way, right? So don't know the situation. But, man, the timing of it just sucks. Dallas police announced Rice would face charges for his involvement of that crash, and he turned himself in and all that. But that happened just last month, so now under investigation for allegedly hitting the photographer. Just last month, though, 8 charges in that case. Collision involving bodily injury, collision involving serious bodily injury, 1 count aggravated assault, so on and so forth. And so his attorney, had that statement last time around, and I'm not sure if they've come out with a statement just yet. But Rashee Rice needs to have a more low-key offseason, guys. I feel like he's finding himself on the wrong end of things the last month or so.
Not careful, we're going to read a story about him that's going to be tragic, and it almost was, and could have been easily on just racing, doing 100+ in a Lamborghini, whatever it was. And it sounds like no matter what, either he has a bunch of bad people around him, or he just doesn't have a clue. And that's the next story might be something that, unfortunately, is worse than the first one, which could have been like he's gone.
Yep, so under investigation for an assault now after the club incident earlier this week. We'll see how all that adds up together, but just notable, especially in light of what happened last month. So
this is Lit Kitchen, by the way, Paul, Craig. This is the...
I've been there a lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've been there a lot. It's a place I frequent.
Yeah, I bet you do. You get the bottle service.
Lit Kitchen calls me all the time. It's like, Paul, can you show up? Just sit in the corner, Don't really have to do anything. That's kind of my vibe.
Yeah.
I bet that's his too.
Yeah, I like a good nightclub appearance just as much as the next guy.
Yeah. Well, he probably, I don't know. I'm not going to tell a grown man what to do, but nightclubs probably aren't the best spot right now, just given everything that's unfolded. Maybe just stay at home for a little while and you've got a really sweet thing going on right now. You're on the greatest football team on earth with arguably, maybe when all is said and done, the greatest quarterback of all time. You just won a Super Bowl. Like, don't screw this up, dude. Don't screw this up, but Lord knows it just feels like he's trying to do that or somebody's trying to drive him to do that. I don't know, but Rashee Rice, again, like I said, now under investigation for hitting a photographer at a club in Dallas.
Still might face Roger Goodell.
I'm sure, yeah. I mean, you talk about...
Remember, protect the shield. Now, that doesn't mean everyone that doesn't gets, hammered, but you're not just now getting all... Let's just pick... Rashee Rice is going to have a conversation with Roger Goodell in New York City at some point this summer.
Oh, yeah, I think that's very fair to say. So, yeah, just a note of interest there. Meanwhile, we've heard a lot of talk this offseason thanks to Caitlin Clark about just women's basketball in general, and thought this was notable. But WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert announced today the league will start using charter flights for all of their teams this season, whereas they'd been using, for the most part, commercial flights, which got a lot of backlash. Obviously, players would rather fly charter. Fans would prefer to see, I guess, the stars fly charter. Coaches, of course, everybody would rather fly charter, but that's just not the way the league was set up. But Engelbert, WNBA commissioner, says we intend to fund a full-time charter for this season. The program's expected to cost roughly $25 million per year for all these charter flights for the next 2 seasons, but they plan to launch a program as soon as they can get the planes in places. And that season starts, the WNBA season, a week from today. But we've heard the complaints about just the travel and things like that. So maybe this is another sign of them rounding a corner as far as just the stature and the treatment and things like that. I don't know, but it is significant.
$25 million?
Yeah.
Who's paying for that?
The NBA.
The NBA is going to.
Caitlin Clark, probably.
But look, here's the thing. They can
in a roundabout way.
They can subsidize $25 million pretty easily.
I get it.
But look,
it's not your money.
It is kind of crazy that you go from being a college athlete and being able to charter, and then you step up a level, and you are. You might get to fly first class, which is nice, which I'm sure they're paying out the wazoo for anyway. But even then, you've got more people than probably sits in a first class section on a WNBA team. So it needed to be done. Here's the other thing the WNBA is probably going to be able to do. There are lots of charter flight companies out there popping up now, like Wheels Up. I would think that maybe that's an opportunity for sponsorship, especially if Caitlin Clark flies Wheels Up, then maybe that's something that would be worth their while.
I just think, and I know that they have a lot of detractors, and I'm not a fan of the league per se, but I don't know, people bristle when they try to do anything good for the game. It's like, where's the money coming from? Why do you deserve that? And it's like, why do you care?
Here's the thing: the people who are bristling at that and saying, "Where does the money come from?" are not buying WNBA tickets.
Right, exactly.
So it's not coming from them.
But I get that they're going to make more money moving forward. That Caitlin Clark has moved the needle along with others that are part of the league. At the same time, just because it's not the right way to set up doesn't just mean you go give things for free, do you? I'm not paying for a WNBA ticket. I don't watch many, if any, of their games. She has made women's basketball, no question, more popular now than it's ever been before. But you still have to pay for it, right? Somebody's got to pay for it.
Well, they're going to pay for it.
You
earn that.
Yeah, it's not your tax dollars or anything. It's just an NBA owner or a WNBA owner kicking more in.
So it's free?
I don't know. You're taking a strange approach to this.
Shouldn't the league earn that money or have a sponsor, as you said, now?
Well, maybe they will.
Before you give that to them?
Maybe they will. The problem is that they've probably been being a little stingy on the CBA because of previous things before, and there's a new era. I don't think it's bad to give your players a new perk.
I never said it was bad.
No,
I
but
I think it's great. It's like a WNBA player makes a couple $100,000 a year, had to go to Europe to make $1 million. I never understood that, but it is supply and demand. You have to still
supply is
earn
as
that.
high as it's ever been, and
Yeah.
they're taking full advantage because it would look really stupid to have Caitlin Clark sitting next to you in the freaking Dallas Hub Airport when she's got a big game. Like, I think you want to treat your stars like stars.
I get that.
And so at a time when more people are potentially watching than ever and attention's been as high as it's ever been, I think it's a logical step to actually make your stars seem like stars and not standing next to you in line at the Southwest Terminal.
If the popularity sustains itself, which I hope
and
it
even
does.
if it doesn't, if that's how they want to treat their players, that's how they want to treat their players. Like, if the company that we work for says, hey, we want to put you on charter flights, I'm not going to say, well, I didn't earn it or deserve it. Like, if you want to do that, great. If you want to treat me like that, fantastic. I think the better you can treat your employees, the better the world would be. So if they want to put their employees on charter flights, I'll let them worry about the finances. It's not me as an outside observer to care about how they pay for it.
Well, I still think this is supply and demand. I'm not arguing that they shouldn't use charter flights, but
If the NBA was struggling to subsidize them, they would have stopped it a very long time ago. So, again, this is, none of the billionaire owners in the NBA are like, oh, crap, there goes my ski chalet in the Swiss Alps. Like, it's still fine for them. Nothing's going to change. And, look, their salaries.
Then why didn't they do it last year?
Because nobody was complaining about it.
No, they complained. They've complained about it.
But nobody, no one else cares.
I just said
you have to deal with PR.
They've got the biggest spotlight on them they've ever had. Hey, let's treat our players better. I don't know why anybody would have an issue with that. It doesn't matter where the money's coming from. If they can swing it, they can swing it. It's a good thing for the players and just for the league. Am I going to watch because of it? No, but I think it's a notable thing.
But a salary is going to increase now because of Caitlin Clark, or
Why
just
not?
for Caitlin Clark?
If the CBA, they have the CBA up in 2 years, we'll see.
If they get the TV deal done. Right? I mean, isn't that right?
Yeah.
You still have to do that, and I'm sure that they will because of her popularity.
Yeah, and that's I don't know. I think they earn it by being in the league. I don't know that they have to all drum up the individual monetary demands to get a charter flight. I think that's just.
I don't, and also the players have a good point. The women's basketball has not been not popular because of the players. They've always had good players. Now they might have better players now as basketball gets better and better. The WNBA has not been popular because nobody's been willing to promote it to the level they are now, and.
Including some of those who are the fan base who don't support it themselves.
Exactly. Again, the fans got to go, but and I do think the wrong people get blamed for a lot of that sometimes. I've been very clear about that. But again, I don't care. Again, none of this money is ever coming to me.
We spent more time on this than I ever intended.
Yeah. It's fine. Give them charter flights. You know what? Give them each their own plane. It doesn't matter to me.
Let them
it's
vote.
Never coming out of me. Yeah.
I mean,
take off your bras and vote.
Yeah. Jeez Louise. All right. So elsewhere.
I'm sorry. I just was curious. I think that's. I thought I should ask the question. I didn't know it was going to turn into such a heated discussion.
No, I don't think it's turned. I'm saying, geez Louise, we spent a lot more time on that than I ever anticipated.
Well, it's like in women's basketball at the NCAA tournament. They were treated, the facilities, the way they did in San Antonio was terrible.
Which you feel they deserve that because they don't bring in enough revenue to earn the right snacks that the men get.
It's a different deal because of Title IX.
Right.
Oh, but it should be.
It's just nice treatment of somebody. That's all it is.
You shouldn't also have to have a law to make sure that you do things better. Yeah. It's.
But you still have to pay for it somehow.
Well,
with
it's
the
not
value.
your money, though.
Yeah.
It's
why do you care?
Some billionaire's money.
So I can't have an opinion on something because I'm not paying for it?
No, but I mean, why? It seems like you're upset that the money has to come from somewhere. The money is coming from a billionaire who will never even realize it's gone. It's $25 million.
Is he doing that because he's being nice, or is he doing that because of pressure to support women's basketball?
I don't know.
Maybe
You're
he
making
should
this
just
way
do
too
it better
complicated.
because the players will be more comfortable and they don't have to go play in other countries.
Yeah, I mean,
there's things.
the horror. Brittany Griner didn't have to go to Russia
I think that ended when Brittany got arrested.
Yeah, well, at least in
no,
Russia.
It actually hasn't. And if you know what? If it did, because now they go, damn, that's messed up that our girls have to go play in Italy for 4 months because we don't pay them enough to just stay over here stateside. If that gets corrected, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great for women athletes.
But if it gets corrected, it doesn't have to be corrected because they earn that.
Well,
Am I taking crazy pills?
Yes.
Who has they haven't earned it?
Yes.
What's the
Why weren't they doing it before?
Because maybe the guys in charge are dicks.
Maybe they weren't having enough revenue to support it.
Yeah, but maybe why? But there's more reasons.
You're the one that has said that the WNBA has not had the revenue because their own fans don't support them.
Yes. I'm told, yes, the fans have to go support them, but this revenue is not coming from me, so I don't care where it comes from. It's coming from the owners, and part of the problem with the WNBA is not because it's not the athletes' fault that they haven't earned. The athletes have all been women's basketball, sport, whatever sport, college baseball, that's a men's sport. They all deserve more people to go and see them. It's not. Is it college baseball's fault that nobody goes? No, it's not the players' fault. It's everybody in charge, above it, not promoting it the right way. And
there's a lot of college baseball programs that have great attendance.
There's a lot that don't, though. But it's not the players' fault. Is it the players' fault in college baseball or college softball that they don't make as much money in NIL as basketball or football?
Spring football leagues are dying, right? Why?
Because people don't go.
Because people don't go, and they can't afford to. They don't have revenue flow, so they die.
So why would you care if those spring football players got chartered flights?
You guys are apparently not listening to me.
No,
I don't.
I was listening. I was listening as in we were supposed to have a cutoff, and we were going on and on about this story.
I got to call Brandon Marcello.
So
anyway,
there's off the radar. There you go.
Yeah.
I don't have time. I guess I'll throw it real quick. NBA tonight. Cavaliers at the Celtics, 6 o'clock on TNT. That is game one. Mavericks at Oklahoma City. That's a game one as well, 8:30 on TNT. Stanley Cup playoffs, Rangers up 1-0, 6 o'clock hosting the Carolina Hurricanes on ESPN. And then the Dallas Stars hosting the Avalanche in game number one of the Western Conference side of things, 8:30 on ESPN. There's a few things off the radar.
All right, Greg, thank you very much. We're now joined by Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports. It's a great article. The 2023-24 coaching carousel, the trends, offensive coordinators on the move, etc. Brandon, thanks for your time with Craig and Paul. David Smoak as well. Was there something in particular that jumped out at you after watching or looking through all of these trends?
Well, there were several. Number one, I think a lot of people were wondering and kind of anecdotally, on anecdotal evidence saying, hey, a lot of coaches are leaving college football and go to the NFL because they're tired of workload, the NIL, transfer portal. And it's somewhat correct. At least the data backs up that belief. We've had more coaches than potentially ever leave this year for the NFL. That's 34. That's a number that has been on the rise each of the last 2 years. We were at 18 coaches leaving for the NFL 2 years ago, and then 28 last year, and then 34 this year. Meanwhile, the amount of coaches coming from the NFL to college football has leveled off. So considering that the NFL's got less jobs available than 134 FBS teams, it's certainly something there that at least the data backs up that maybe some coaches are looking to get in the professional ranks. And of course, one would naturally say, well, it's a natural progression. It's a quote-unquote promotion. But more and more we're seeing a lot of coaches who are leaving for the NFL are some support staff guys and position coaches who go on to the NFL for maybe, equal positions. They're not necessarily looking to become head coaches or even coordinators in the NFL.
Do you think this trend will continue, or do you think it's something that right now could be a blip until they kind of get used to the way things are now?
I believe it's this trend will start ticking back down, or at least leveling off here in the next 2 to 3 years. My belief is that once we have some sort of revenue sharing model in place for football players, that'll potentially, or not potentially, it will lead to more structure within the sport. And by that, I mean collective bargaining potentially, and then maybe even player contracts. Are they going to be employees or not? But most importantly, a lot of coaches out there believe that there'll probably not be as much movement of players from school to school. Now, why is that? Well, the possibility, and I'm not saying this is likely even, but the possibility that some players could be signing documents or contracts, whatever you want to call it, that say, hey, I'm giving you a 2-year deal, or I'm giving you a 3-year deal. All of this, of course, contingent on whether NIL actually goes in-house with some of these athletic departments, like we're seeing with some states like Virginia really pushing that across. And if that ends up happening, in addition to the revenue sharing piece, I think that would curb some of the workload for coaches as a result, because they wouldn't have to worry about players coming and going. And secondly, it would probably allow them to tighten up the transfer portal windows and then also maybe some of the recruiting windows themselves, so they have more of a structured work schedule. Whereas it is now, they're pretty much working nonstop until the month of July, and that's when there's a dead period. But at that point, they're preparing as coaches for preseason camp and even some big recruiting visits in August. So there's really not a lot of downtime. And listen, a lot of us would say, including me, oh, boo-hoo, that's what the money's for. It's why you're getting paid lots of money more than ever in the coaching industry. But still, they're human beings. And, some of them don't really care about the money. And that's why you're seeing them, one, either leave the NFL or other leagues, or some of them, quote unquote, taking demotions or going elsewhere within the sport. As we saw this year, we had 4 head coaches leave their jobs to go be assistants elsewhere in college football. So it's, the context is king here, but what we're seeing is more and more coaches just kind of looking around going, I'm not sure I care all that much about the money as I do trying to find something that just makes me a little bit more sane.
Brandon, one of the bullet points that you had was that Big 12 assistants have the best job security. Can you explain that without trying to take thunder away from your article? Of course, everybody needs to go and read the article, but why do Big 12 assistants have the best job security?
Yeah, the average lifespan of a head coach in college football right now is 3 years going into this season. In the Big 12, it's 5.7 seasons, almost 6 seasons. And, of course, guys like Kyle Whittingham, who's coming in from Utah, of course, Mike Gundy, even Matt Campbell at Iowa State, they kind of help buoy that on the north end, of course. But you've got a lot of 4th, 5th, 6-year coaches in the league as well. I mean, you look at it right now, 9 of the conference's 16 head coaches have been there for at least 4 years. That's unheard of across major college football. What makes this even more interesting to me is that the Big 12 has been in more turmoil in this realignment era than any other power conference outside the Pac-12, which is no more entering this season. There have been teams coming and going each of these last 2 years, and they're adding 4 more programs this year, and yet they're adding programs which, for the most part, have some veteran coaches or have been there at least 2 to 3 years. Why is that? I think it's as simple as this. They got great coaches. I think make no mistake, there's a reason why a lot of people like me go into this preseason potentially and go, who's going to win the Big 12? I could say anyone but maybe 1 or 2 teams. I would circle on the calendar and go, you know what, that team has a chance to win the Big 12 championship this year. That's because of great coaches, a great level playing field in a lot of ways with the talent there. But at some point, right, you would think the bottom would fall out. We were projecting last year that the bottom could potentially fall out because there's going to be so much change in the league already by adding BYU and UCF and Cincinnati, and now adding even more. You wonder, okay, at some point, this much change leads to changes at the top of these programs. Look at the AAC. I know no one's paying attention to the AAC all that much, but going into last year, they were going under a massive change in membership themselves, and they had more than half their conference change head coaches, and they had some of the biggest staff changes on the assistant coaching schedule as well. And yet the Big 12 has managed to kind of go smooth sailing throughout all these troubled waters. I would think that after this upcoming year, when you've got coaches like Dave Aranda at Baylor, even maybe Sonny Dykes at TCU, not saying he's going to get fired, but maybe he's got some staff changes he could potentially have to make this year if they just struggle a little bit. Or even Colorado with Deion Sanders. Those are programs where if you're not kind of getting over the hump at this point, you could see some massive changes within those programs, and that would mean a lot more staff overhauls. But as it stands right now, man, the Big 12 over the last 3 years have had the least amount of changes in college football. And that really, I think, out of anything we've talked about, is the most staggering thing I pulled out from all of this. Because not only are they the lowest, but they're the conference with the most turmoil as far as membership.
Yeah, considering all the things that have happened with conference realignment. And so you mentioned Big Ten SEC coaches have the shortest career. Is that because the not the desire to win, but the pressure to win is higher?
Oh, absolutely. I think so. also, when you look around in the Big Ten, the SEC, it's not just the head coaches. They fire coordinators at a whim there, and a lot of times in the middle of the season, and head coaches in the middle of the season. I mean, goodness gracious, Mississippi State fired their first-year head coach before the end of the season. Arkansas fired their OC with like 3 or 4 games left in the season in his first year as the coordinator. Every year it seems like those are moves being made in the SEC or the Big Ten. And that just continues. The Big Ten had 87 changes this year. The SEC had 77. Not far behind. And, of course, those two conferences lead the way as far as changes. In fact, the next closest power conference is the Big 12, and they only had 50 changes overall and did so that with more schools, so to speak, than the SEC, I should say, with all the movement they've had. So, but that'll continue, I believe, because this trend has been going on in the SEC and the Big Ten for the last 3 years as well.
Brandon, with the coaching salaries heading the way they are, I mean, Kirby Smart's at $13 million. Like that, coaching salaries are better in college, though, for a large part than they are in the NFL. Do you think that is something that might also help stave off the exodus?
No, I don't personally, because I don't think coaching salaries are going to balloon all that much more, if at all, with revenue sharing coming to the forefront. I think some of the big-time blue blood programs will continue to pay quite a bit. I mean, goodness gracious, anything over, $4 million is amazing pay in college football right now. But the outrageous numbers, I think those will only stick to maybe a handful, like 4 or 5 programs. But I think at this point, kind of what you're seeing with the salaries at the mid-tier power programs, I would think that those will probably level off here in the next couple of years before we get into the revenue sharing program, because these schools are going to be paying $15 to $25 million a year to players, in addition to potentially anything they're getting with their NIL, which could double that figure. And there's going to be a lot of hard decisions to be made here. One with, the ancillary sports, the ones who do not make money, of course. Could we see programs getting cut? I think that's very possible. But of course, the Title IX law, which has been around for half a century, that is going to be a major influence in all this. How does that get handled in the courts? It'll be fascinating to watch. But if you're pinching pennies already at some of these programs preparing for potential revenue sharing, and when that actually happens, I don't think you're going to see a lot of quote-unquote mid-tier power programs going out there and going, all right, we're going to pay a coach $7 million or $8 million a year. I think what you're seeing now, it's going to have to kind of steady off a little bit.
So the support staffers, you mentioned there's 106 promotions, and we know that the analyst jobs that exploded with Saban at Alabama, I know Texas added a bunch, and heck, I sometimes don't know how many a school might even have. Is that something that might get cut back to with the possibility or the inevitability of revenue sharing?
I don't think so. I think it's actually going to grow just a smidgen. And the reason why I say that is because if the NCAA ends up approving this rule that's been pushed for the last year of allowing unlimited on-field coaches, I think many programs are still going to add maybe a few more quote-unquote analysts. And by that, I mean, when we say analysts now, those are guys who just can't coach on the field, but they're helping behind the scenes with preparation and game film. Those guys, their new titles are going to be much like what we see in the NFL today. Assistant offensive line coach, assistant quarterbacks coach. They're going to have 2 guys pretty much at every position coaching a position. But I'll say this, talking to a lot of major college coaches, they don't expect and don't really want to expand their staffs beyond what they have already. They're just going to, quote unquote, bump up these analysts to these new titles and maybe add another coach or 2. And as Matt Rule, the Nebraska coach, told me, and I've heard this from a couple other coaches, their approach is that we just want to keep our veteran position coaches we've got now and then kind of have a younger guy who's the assistant offensive line coach or assistant linebackers coach who, one, can be learning that system underneath that coach. So in case that coach leaves, they can get bumped up. And secondly, they can connect with the kids a little bit more in the meeting rooms and behind the scenes more so than on the field. So I don't think we're going to see a big balloon of new staffers. Doesn't mean, though, that there's not some program out there that's maybe thinking like Alabama did a decade or so ago with Nick Saban with analysts and goes, you know what, we're going to hire 10 or 15 more guys. But for the vast majority, I don't think they will.
Do you feel like this offseason with Nick Saban, of all people, being the one that moves on, which kickstarted this domino effect that it seemed like it was never going to end, and then also with Harbaugh leaving, was this kind of a perfect storm, or is this still the norm?
This is still the norm because we already had nearly a record amount of changes before Nick Saban retired. We were also, pretty much believing that Jim Harbaugh was going to leave, and that ended up happening. And there's going to be more dominoes as well there. But it certainly affected things. We saw 5 head coaches change in the time after Nick Saban retired. But at some point, he was going to retire anyway, right, in the next few years. And that was going to set off a huge domino effect. It did happen this year, and we had a record year with 31 head coaches. But I don't think this was necessarily a year that was outside the norm. I still think there's probably going to be around 25 to 30 changes every year at the top of programs, and the numbers have proven that out year after year after year. It's really been on the rise here, especially over these last 7 to 8 years.
So on the revenue sharing and all of that, we've had Mack Rhodes. He hadn't been on in a while. We have him on, I think, next week. But you now heard what Troy Dannon said. Mack Rhodes on our show mentioned revenue sharing. When is that, in your opinion, going to start? Will that still depend on what happens with that House versus NCAA lawsuit?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It depends mostly on that. And really what's going to be interesting is what type of model the two parties kind of come up with from that. And also, a lot of these player associations that have been getting off the ground the last few months, they want a seat at the table in formalizing a revenue sharing model and having some player voices in that room to say, here's what we want. But in the end, the talk has always been among the associations and people I've talked to, they're going to want about 20% share of media revenue. And it looks like the NCAA, in their discussions based off other reporting, I think from Yahoo Sports and ESPN, was something around 22%. So they're in the ballpark. They all have the idea of what this model is going to look like, but there will be a big push to try and get players involved in this settlement to formalize and formulate, I should say, what this model looks like. When will it be in place? I think it could happen as soon as this time next year in July of 2025 when we talk about the academic calendar. I think it could be in place that soon, though I would say they want to get this done quickly for the players. Maybe they put a temporary model in there as they develop what the finalized one will look like in 2026 potentially. But everybody I've talked to says that, including ADs and some of these player association folks, that they believe that we'll be sitting here in a year from now talking about what that model looks like and having it in place by the time July 1st, 2025 arrives. Brandon, is there anything to be taken from the fact that the coordinators were right down the middle, even 60 offensive and 60 defenses, or is that just the way it is? I think that was just luck. I think it was a flip of the coin. Yeah, I was shocked that it was 60-60. Every year it's one way or another. It has been since I've been tracking this. This year it was perfectly aligned. I think it was just one of those things that just happened that I wasn't quite expecting. But what the other trend I would say in this, I don't want to give my entire article away because it's months and months of work, but the other thing is we're seeing, you've heard coaches talk about the portal killing high school recruiting and more often than not, junior college recruiting. I mean, when's the last time we heard about, the number one JUCO quarterback's going to so-and-so and they got a chance to win a national championship this year. That's not happening anymore. And it's also affecting coaches. So these coaches aren't going to recruit the JUCOs. So they're not being around the coaches and saying, hey, this guy's the next up-and-comer. We should look at him for this staff position we got come open. So look at this. I mean, just guess how many JUCO coaches were promoted, so to speak, into the FBS this year. Oh, okay.
20.
Yeah, okay. There's a number. Okay. That's a
good guess. Certainly. 0.
Brandon, missed it. Guess a number.
Missed it by that much.
Yeah, missed it by 20. Wow.
So I mean, we're talking. Listen, just a year ago and years before that, it was about 10 a year, 5 to 10 a year. Not happening anymore, guys. It has been slowly dwindling year after year since the portal's been around, and I think that's literally just it's recency bias because these coaches are around these other coaches, and also it's just you don't know who you don't know, right? And these head coaches aren't recruiting the JUCOs all that much anymore. they're not getting in front of these other assistant coaches and getting an idea of who's the up-and-comers. So it's really hurting them quite a bit more. And also, along with that, the line that's connecting that, support staffer promotions. Those have been on the rise and also been pretty consistent year after year after year. Those guys are just keeping their own. They're bringing the grad assistants in, promoting them to analysts, and then those analysts end up becoming very young position coaches, even in the Power Five. It's really interesting to see how much the hiring practices have changed in just a short order of time, and a lot of it is because of the portal, because coaches just aren't simply on JUCO campuses anymore recruiting.
Yeah, the Cam Newtons of the world leaving Blinn Junior College for Auburn, just you don't hear about that. Of course, he was a once-in-a-lifetime type of guy, but you make a great point. I went to a JUCO, so that kind of concerns me a little bit, and I wondered about that.
Ole Miss took a few players out of the JUCO this year. I think they went through that. Of course, that's what Lane was doing. But, yeah, I mean, Brandon, it's different.
So much different. And, again, we've heard coaches talk about how it's affecting and it's hurting high school recruits, of course, especially during the season when they're finishing up the season. A lot of these kids, they don't blossom really into big-time players. You know, a lot of these 2- or 3-star guys, they look more like 4-star guys at the end of their senior season, right? But the coaches aren't really getting to see them all that much because they're focused more on the portal opening up in December and trying to figure out their quick fixes and getting ahead of the pack there. And that's really affected the evaluation of some really hidden gems out there on the high school level. And a lot of those kids are going, quote, unquote, to FCS as 2-star guys or 3-star guys that maybe should be getting bigger looks and better looks from college coaches. But everybody wants the big fix now because now it's available through the portal. It's just the way it is. It's the new way of the game, and it'll continue to be that way until they really maybe change the system once again, which, again, I think that it's very possible that we see some of these things kind of curve back a little bit and we see some of these numbers drop, not just in the coaching carousel, but also just the amount of transfer portal kids each program's getting every year.
As you see on the screen, Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports, at B Marcello. I just put a link up to the article. Go read it. Subscribe if you haven't. It's really, really detailed. You said months. My last question is just a number. How long ago did you start trying to piece all this together? I can't even imagine the time.
The day pretty much David Braun got elevated to head coach at Northwestern, so last July. I got a spreadsheet and everything that I update every single day with a lot of tags and stuff like that, so I can keep up with, well, this guy was a position coach in this type of conference in the group of 5. How successful have they been in the Power 5 or whatever, where they've come from and all that. So a lot of data to keep up with, but it's a lot of fun because when you kind of spit it all out, like I did last week and worked on it and kind of comb through the details, you start seeing some of these trends that a lot of coaches anecdotally believe are happening. And then sure enough, you provide them the data and it supports what they're saying.
Great stuff, Brandon. Absolutely phenomenal job. Thanks for your time, Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports, on the article that I just pinned, or I didn't pin it. I just put it up, the link into the chat room. Really cool. And so there's a slight trend that I guess you could depend on percentage as far as up to the NFL. We've seen that, and we'll see how that continues over the next year or 5. But the coordinators right down the middle, 60 offensive, 60 defensive, 4 changes on every staff on average in the last few months in college football. When we come back, John McClain, Hall of Famer, this is 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. Bob Mock owns 5 locations in Waco. There used to be none. It's growth, but it's also, that's how popular the pizza brand is, and also the fastest growing pizza brand in America. Go to Marcos.com if you want to go online. They have different discounts and much more, code words for this or that, depending on what pizza you want and also what else you want. Perhaps wings, sandwiches, salads, and more. 5 locations in the Waco area: Hewitt, Woodway, China Spring, Bellmead, and Robinson. Marco's Pizza, 5 locations in Waco and hopefully one near you. Marcos.com. Pizza lovers get it.
It's the season to rev up your drive with Alan Samuels with the new Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram in Waco. Your ultimate destination for unbeatable deals and top-notch service. Looking for a reliable ride to conquer these beautiful spring days? Look no further. The powerful trucks and sleek sedans are the perfect SUV. We've got the perfect vehicle to match your style and budget. Over 300 new vehicles to choose from. Now's the time to make your move. Enjoy special discounts, low financing rates, and incredible incentives. But hurry, these offers won't last forever. Alan Samuels in Waco.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student-athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student-athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student-athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing is time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Saw this note on John McClain's timeline. 49th year covering sports in Houston, 47 at the Houston Chronicle, a 40th consecutive year doing regular radio, and says, I haven't worked a day since I got here. Thank you for your time, John. I think you may have been a part of Houston radio this morning. What was that like?
Well, one of my former station had laid me off, Sports Radio 610, 3 months ago. One of our rivals, the ESPN affiliate, 97.5 FM, I think I'm going to go to work for them. And a guy who used to work with us at 610, John Granado, he goes on the Lance Zierlein from NFL.com and NFL Network. You see a lot during the draft. So Lance is still recovering from all that pre-draft and draft work, so he was off. John asked me to come in and sit in with him for 2 hours, and it's just like old times. Had a blast. And so, you know, when I got in the sports business, it was a job about my first year in Waco when I didn't know squat, working for Dave Campbell and Hollis Biddle. And then after that first year, when I kind of figured it out, it's never been a job since. It's been a privilege. All I do is talk about sports anyway, and to get paid for it all these decades has been incredible. And by the way, I'm on my way to Waco Friday because Saturday at the Texas Sports Hall of Fame, we're having a funeral celebration of life of Pat Zachry, one of the most notable Waco athletes in history. I knew Pat starting in Little League when we played on the opposite teams, and I was friends with him a long time. I was here when he came in with a Big Red Machine in 76. He came to the Big Red Machine in 76, and I came to the Chronicle. And the first time he was there, Lester Zed and I went down, got press passes, and went down in the dugout during batting practice. I didn't know you could do that. And there's Pat with Pete Rose and Johnny Bench and Joe Morgan and Tony Perez. And I'm like, my God, I can't believe we're down here. And he wasn't pitching that night. Bench and Rose were giving him all kinds of grief. but it was good natured, and Pat was giving it back to him. And right before he went to run sprints, he's sitting next to me, and I said, "Holy bleep!" I said, "How long is it taking you to get used to this?" He said, "I'm not. I just act like it. We come a long way from Northwestern Little League, haven't we?" So I'm honored his son Josh has asked me if I will speak on Pat's life, and I'm honored to do it, and I can't wait to get there and celebrate the life of one of Waco's greatest characters and greatest athletes.
John, I had the opportunity to have lunch with him one time years and years ago, and the stories he told I cannot repeat, even on YouTube, out of good taste. But he was certainly, it was one of the funniest lunches of my life, because he had, I mean, the stories he had on Tommy Lasorda alone, like, you know, I should have just recorded it so we could have it for posterity. It was
one of the things, Paul. I went over some things about Pat going back to Tennyson Junior High, Richville High School, because he was mischievous, always playing jokes on people. And I told Josh, I said, "You sure I can tell this with your 4 sons and Meredith's kid? He had 5 grandkids." And he said, "Oh yeah, I want you to tell them." And I said, "Okay." So I am. And I'll tell you a story that's interesting. He came here. He was introduced to Sharon, who was from Midway. And Sharon was in Houston. And he was set up on a blind date with her by one of his friends growing up, Larry Davis, who also played in our little league on the First Federal. Pat played on Dealers. Bill Goss and I played on Shell. And so Pat had a blind date. I didn't think much about it. Next time the Reds were in, they came in Thursday night. They played the Astros on the weekend. So I went over there last night on Marriott Hotel, and we had a beer. And he said, "Can you give me a ride over to an apartment?" I said, "Sure. Where are you going?" He said, "Well, I met this woman when I was there the last time." I said, "Oh, okay." And we're driving over there, and the place is close to me where she lived. And I said, "Well, what's her name?" He said, "Sharon. She's from Waco, but she's living here, and I kind of like her." So he was supposed to be there, say, 6 o'clock. I pull in the complex. She's up on kind of the balcony waving at him. He's got half of his body outside the car. And I looked, and I said, "No offense, Pat, but what is she doing with you?" And he said, "Well, I don't know, but I'm going to find out." And then he and Sharon fell in love and got married and had 2 beautiful kids. And so people are going to tell stories after Pat. David Dixon, one of Waco's most prominent attorneys, he's going to kind of be the MC, and then Josh will talk about his dad. And it's going to be an open mic. And I told Jay Black at the Hall of Fame we might be there for 10 hours. And we're going over to George's afterward.
John, why are the Astros why did all the players get bad at once?
Paul, if I knew that, I could call up Jim McClain, the owner, and say, "Hey, I got a magic potion here that's going to snap you out of the doldrum." I thought when the Astros started to go down, it would be a gradual process, not going off a cliff. And one of the problems that can't be blamed on injuries is the back of their bullpen that was supposed to be the best in baseball. Josh Hader stinks. He is awful. Ryan Presley, taken out of the closer's role. He is not adapted to the setup role. Brian Abreu got no injury problems whatsoever. He's been terrible. It's inexcusable. Now, Kyle Tucker, Jose Altuve, and Jeremy Pena have hit well. Now, Alex Bradman, awful. He wants $300 million in 10 years. He ain't getting it. And even Yordan Alvarez is kind of slumping. Now, we think all the hitters were back. Chaz McCormick, terrible. We think with all the hitters back from last year that they will snap out of it. But the pitcher, Hunter Brown, He couldn't hit Lake Waco if he's standing on the Twin Bridges. He has been terrible. Needs to go to the bullpen. Yes, they've had injuries, but it's inexcusable when you have healthy players not coming close to what they've done in the past. The only saving grace, it's a long season, and I don't know if that means they're going to recover or we're going to be tortured for another, let's see, May, June, July, August, for another 5 months.
John, I couldn't tell. I was looking on your timeline to see if you had mentioned it, but did you get a chance to watch the Tom Brady roast by any chance?
Oh, I know all about the Tom Brady roast. We went over to Texas' annual charity golf tournament at River Oaks Country Club, and the media got through about 45 minutes before Cal McNair, Hannah McNair, and Nico Ryans came to talk to us. So there's about 30 media people there. Everybody was talking about the roast, the lines that made us cringe, the lines that were the funniest, and how they went over the line. And I'll guarantee you the next person that does that, there's going to be some restrictions. And I think the person that should pay him $10 million. He admits he's lost millions gambling. Charles Barkley. Can you imagine Barkley sitting there for those
that would be a great roast.
I think he would be fantastic.
John, Rashee Rice, yet again in the news. When will he meet with Roger Goodell and it will be stat?
Nobody knows right now. They're kind of waiting to get more information on this. He's going to be gone. He might be gone half the year. Now being dumb enough to be in a club, rough up a photographer. And if that's true, and I'm guessing they got cameras everywhere, just the fact that this is hanging over his head and he's out on the town shows how stupid and immature he is. And that's why you want to know why they went after Xavier Worthy and signed Hollywood Brown. The defending Super Bowl champions know there's a good chance they could be playing without him from half a year to a full season. And I don't know what you do. You know, his family, his agent, his coaches, his quarterback, they're all so frustrated with that kid.
Absolutely. John McClain with us, Hall of Fame columnist on 365 Sports.
John, do you think the Chiefs make a move to address it? I mean, I know they got Hollywood Brown. I know they drafted Xavier Worthy, but someone to, fill in, for him?
I think they got their eye out. Mm-hmm. Like the Titans did, they signed Tyler Boyd. The Chiefs could have signed Boyd, who had 67 catches last year. And the league doesn't give a team any hint about what the discipline might be. But I'm sure Andy Reid has got some ideas about what he could do, depending on how long that suspension is for.
John, the schedule comes out apparently at the end, sometime maybe Thursday or so, and it's always a big deal. The NFL continues to find a way. They've done this now for a handful of years, but that they know when to get the attention of their fans, which seems like it's already on them 24/7 anyway.
Yeah, whoever came up with the idea of moving it to May instead of right before the draft, the time I thought, so what? What's the big deal? Now the NFL owns May. All the speculation. They should delay it till next week, till the middle of May, because then we'll be talking about it all afterward. I'm writing, I think, 2 columns on HoustonTexans.com about what I would like to see in the schedule. After it comes out, I'll write another 1 or 2 because they get all kinds of clicks on the website. So everything NFL does, most of the things are smart. They always make money.
Thank you, John. We appreciate it as always. Great you're back on the radio. Hopefully that works out, and you can give us an update next week. Have a great rest of the week.
Second Bears. Thanks, guys.
John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist with us on 365 Sports. One quick note, Miro Little, who played at Baylor, has committed to transfer to Utah. He'll stay within the Big 12 Conference, but headed to play at Utah.
He and Caleb Lohner can take the same plane.
Yeah, they could. Absolutely. I reached out to Caleb today by a phone call, didn't answer.
It stinks for Miro that he didn't get a shot really to kind of to develop at Baylor, but they recruit guards so well, and he's not a true point guard, so that it just kind of made it problematic for him to crack the lineup.
Yeah, no, there wasn't. He actually did see some decent quality time, but it was kind of sporadic.
Yeah.
And then, of course, bringing in Jeremy Roach and what they have coming in with Edgecombe and others, that Robert Wright, we'll see what was going to happen there. Jaden Nunn staying was a big deal, too. All right, and Langston Love. Again, a lot of guards. This is 365 Sports. Don Chimidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center off of Valley Mills and Richland Drive in Waco with a 48-foot walk-in humidor loaded up with every imaginable great brand of cigar and even some of the up-and-coming brands of cigars around the world. Cigars from around the world. You have Macanudo and Ashton. You have Romeo and Julieta, H. Upman and more. You have Cohiba and Padron. My favorite brand is Rocky Patel. And I love the Rocky Patel Torpedo Edge Light. It's part of what they have in the store. 48-foot walk-in humidor. It is monstrous. And on top of that, they also, if you need accessories from cutters to punches to the torch lighters, they can do that for you. Vita Dreams, a CBD product that helps you go to sleep and get that extra 30 minutes to an hour of sleep where you're not tossing and turning. And even they have the THC product if you have chronic pain available there too. Carol, Ashley, and Cheyenne. It's Don Chimidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center in between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Top 5 teams who have improved in portal college basketball. Again, this is going to be an ever-growing ranking because the portal is still going on. It's closed, but a lot of commitments yet to be made and some really good players still available. But so far, let's dive in. Number 5, Mark Pope and the Kentucky Wildcats. You see him there saying, "You're a cat." Meow, meow. Kentucky has had to rebuild the roster completely and fill it up with veterans. With Kerr Krissa alone, they've got a name flash, but the biggest one that they picked up so far is Kobe Brea, who comes in from the MAC, one of the best pure shooters in the country. He is going to be a Kentucky Wildcat. Andrew Carr's in there, Lamont Butler Jr. They've got a lot of players who are going to play a lot of minutes for them, and they're going to be a veteran team for the first time in a very long time. Plus, I'm sure he'll balance that out with some pretty interesting high school recruits as well. Number 4, Darren DeVries and the West Virginia Mountaineers. He starts out just by bringing in his son, Tucker DeVries, one of the best point guards in the country, reshapes that roster completely from the top down. Also adding guard Javon Small just yesterday from Oklahoma State makes that a duo in the backcourt that is going to be reckoned with. And Darren DeVries already hitting the ground running in Morgantown. Expect the West Virginia Mountaineers to make a sizable jump in the Big 12 in year one under Darren DeVries. The only problem with that is that it's the Big 12. And there are 2 other teams on this list who are in the Big 12. It is going to be an absolute fight every single night through 16 teams in this league. Maybe there'll be one that'll be bad. Maybe. Maybe some of the newer teams aren't ready to go just yet, but one of the teams that's coming in is Arizona, and the other one that's coming in is Colorado. And both those teams are NCAA tournament teams, and Arizona is one of the elite programs in the entire country, as you know. But expect a lot from West Virginia in year one under Darren DeVries. They just needed some stability after the Bob Huggins situation, and now that he's brought in his son, Javon Small, and some others, that's going to be a program to watch in 2024. Number 3. Scott Drew and the Baylor Bears. Only 2 transfers in right now, but this is not about quantity so much as it about quality. First off, Jeremy Roach comes in to run the point for the Bears. I don't know if there's a coach in the country who's been better at getting point guards out of the portal than Scott Drew. I don't know, Manu LeCompte. Let's see, give me another one. Davion Mitchell. Give me another one. Oh, I don't know. How about Pierre Jackson? All these guys, excellent point guards out of the portal. And I have Ray J. Dennis just a year ago was one of their better players, and they probably aren't as good as they were without Ray J. Dennis. Although his style didn't completely match the rest of the team, he was an engine that made them go. Jeremy Roach is a player who's been in a Final Four. He's been at Duke. He's been in big games his whole career. Now steps into the Big 12 with a chance to improve his stock for the NBA draft in 2025, something that Scott Drew's been really good at, and steps in with some guards already accomplished like Langston Love and Jaden Nunn, not to mention VJ Edgecombe, the super freshman coming in, and able to facilitate and score will be great. And they also added just yesterday Norshad Omier from Miami, 17 and 10 every night, a good passer, a good blocker, and surprisingly adept at steals and three-pointers for a guy that's his size. He is the dude they've been missing. Kevin Flaherty described him to David Smoak as, imagine Mark Vidal with a rocket up him. That's Norshad Omier, and Baylor's got him and hitting the ground running. A great offseason for Scott Drew, able to tell Louisville and Kentucky no and bring in those kind of players. And number 2, Alabama. I could stop at Clifford Omiuri and be done with this list. That's a big man who's going to really flourish in Nate Oates' system. You remember how good Brandon Miller was a couple years ago. Omiuri comes in with some other players right now. Alabama's not done. They did take a hit in Rylan Griffin, and we're going to talk about him in just a second. But Rylan Griffin's gone. He's off to Kansas. But this is a team in Nate Oates that continues to rebuild, even taking a player away from rival Auburn, something that I know that me and Garrett and like people from our generation don't understand going to the rival, but it happens now in the transfer portal. Nate Oates and Alabama should keep rolling along in 2024. And number 1, the Kansas Jayhawks and Bill Self, my wife's actual first choice for a husband. And I'm not just saying this to score points with my wife. That would be fleeting, and she knows that. She's way smarter. But so far, the team that had the furthest to go of the elite teams to get back to who they were from last year, even though last year for most teams wouldn't have been that bad. A second-round postseason exit for most teams is like, okay, well, that was a fun year. For Kansas, it was an absolute disaster, especially 2 years removed from an NCAA championship. This is a team that feels like with veterans like KJ Adams, Hunter Dickinson, and DeJuan Harris can win. Now, look, Johnny Furphy, according to Bill Self, probably staying in the NBA draft, but that did not slow them down. They added guard A.J. Storr from Wisconsin, who, when he entered the portal, was the most sought-after player in the portal. They added Rylan Griffin from Alabama, one of the most sought-after players in the portal. Riley Kugel, another player they added out of Florida, may or may not get in, but they are still adding talent. And they brought back homegrown talent Zeke Mayo, who is at South Dakota State, a guy who is a scorer off the bench, something they did not have last year. That was supposed to be the Nick Timberlake role. Just didn't really work out for the Jayhawks and Timberlake, but Zeke Mayo comes off the bench, a 3-and-D player like they needed. And Kansas, whose problem wasn't the starting lineup last year, the starting lineup was as good as any starting lineup in the country. It was depth. They did not have any depth. They kind of ran about 5 deep. Now they'll run about 6, 7, 8, well, more than 6. They'll run about 7, 8, maybe even 9 deep when this is all said and done. Again, we don't know about Riley Kugel transferring in from Florida. That might get caught up in the eligibility works, but we'll see. And if he does get in, he's a three-point assassin himself. Bill Self in Kansas, you got him while he was down and recuperating from a heart attack last year. Well, guess what? That ticker's pumping, and Bill Self is here to stay. And make sure you know that, hey, down for a year, but pay heed to all who enter the fog. Reigns even truer than it did before. Kansas should be rolling as 2024 starts. That's the top 5. Let's wrap up the show.
Are you and Bill flirting with each other right there?
I don't know. Like I just put in when I did the Google Slides thing, I put Kansas basketball, and that was the first thing that came up.
He looked happy.
He did.
Must have been shot before last season.
Yeah, for sure. And or were shot like 2 weeks ago after he continues to get everybody he seemingly wants in the portal.
All right, we have an announcement to make. We want to thank you, everybody that's a part of it. If you have subscribed to 365 Sports, we just went past the 40,000 subscriber threshold, and it's been a nice little surge of late. We appreciate you for being a part of what we do. and every day here on 365 Sports. So please, if you don't mind, hit the like and subscribe button. Spread the word. That's a nice threshold for us to get past. And Emery mentioned that to me in a text about an hour ago.
Yeah, that's a nice little bar to hit, and hopefully get a few more to just get over that. It's like when you get to that, like let's say you're trying to get to 1,000 followers, you get like 1,001, and you're just waiting for that shoe to drop of like, oh God, don't unfollow me before like 2 or 3 people follow until I get like some cushion. So let's get some cushion on there. But yeah, let's go to 50, 60, 70, whatever. 40 is a nice mark to hit, so that's great.
Hey, 10,000 more. I will do a keg stand.
You know
right
what?
over there.
It's not that far away.
Not 60,000 more, and we will fill up a dunk tank here on the street full of stale beer, and you can drop me in that. I don't care. Let's get to 100. I'll do every stunt in the book. No, every 10,000, I'll do something.
You need to go take one of those ice baths like you did at a Baylor pregame.
I'll do that again. I don't care. That was only bad because it was cold outside. So when I got out after it, I didn't immediately warm up. I stayed at the same temperature because it was like 36 degrees outside.
Were you worried about when you got out of that the cheerleaders around you would go, God, you must be really cold?
No, I mean, like it was definitely well, not a worry. I had baggy shorts on, but look, I can tell you I was cold.
Yeah, it was cold.
I did that. It was 36 degrees outside. It was the first time in us working together that you ever said, you got to go home.
Yeah.
Like you were like, you have to go home, because I was just, my teeth were chattering. I was walking around seeing who had hot chocolate. No one did. I also might have had in that time a couple of pops to try to warm myself up.
At Baylor?
Yeah.
No, you must have visited Hobby's place.
Back in the day where there was still tailgating out there. So
we get to 100,000, I'll do a show with no hat.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Oh, my God.
100.
There we go.
100,000.
Like if we get to that, I don't give a damn about. I'll do whatever, but I'll just throw that out there. So yeah, there's my promise.
Yeah. Bobby B, outstanding show, gentlemen. Sikkim Bears, congrats on 40. And a lot of you. In fact, Roger said Paul said he would shave his beard.
Oh, no.
For 40,000.
I actually went over that today on the triple option. I am not allowed to shave my beard.
Okay, there we go. Thank you very much.
I'm not the CEO of my company anymore.
No, you're not. Signed, sealed, and 100% delivered. All right, thank you very much to our guests, our sponsors every day, and thank you for being a part of the show. And it's great to get past that 40,000 threshold. Here we are, onward, upward. Tonight, 10:30 on the local CW, 365 Sports Tonight. Emery's working on that. Thanks to Garrett Ross and Jack McKenzie. Paul Craig, I'm David. This is 365 Sports, and good night.